Welcome, guys. We've got Lionheartz here. Welcome to Joshin-Strike. We've got a highlight recap maker, Lionheartz. And I gotta say, if you guys were on Lionheart's stream, you'd have got a brief preview of our pre-game discussion as well, and pre-show discussion as well, and would have seen me just setting up as well. Anyways, welcome to the show. So where are you from, and how do you get into this sort of gig for building recaps and highlights? Like, what made you go into it?
So, I'm from North America. I'm out of California, and I got into CS2 right away when CS2 came out because, like a lot of us, obviously, I played Go for a very long time, but I had stepped away from the game in like 2018 or so to play other games, and I was just finishing high school and starting college, and came back to CS2 when it came out, and I started streaming CS2 right away because I really wanted to try making Counter-Strike content, which is something I'd always thought about doing, but hadn't for a variety of reasons. I was trying other games for a little while. Did Valorant, did Destiny, and then came back to Counter-Strike because it was like the one thing left that I was still really interested in. And initially, I was just focusing on streaming, and I would take all my streams, I would make highlights, and then post them to YouTube. And then I realized that like making daily highlights out of stream content, I could do it, but it was a lot of work. And like if I had a bad stream, I couldn't upload that day. So I started branching out a little bit. I did some guides, smoke tutorials, econ guides, stuff like that. And eventually I started talking about around the major cycle, I would start looking at pro games because I'd always been interested in getting involved in the pro scene. Obviously I grew up watching all of the great By the Numbers podcasts, all the analyst segments of the majors and stuff. I had a lot of respect for the analyst content in the scene. And so I wanted to take a shot at it because it's something I'd already done in Valorant back during the Valorant beta. I got picked up by a YouTube channel called Skillcapped, which is a guide channel. And I was doing their guides around pro matches at the time during the beta and throughout the first year of Valorant. So I knew I already had kind of the skill set to analyze pro matches and talk about them, but I wanted to do something different because I feel like a lot of the space when it comes to analyzing the pro scene, you have podcasts and you have like very specific demo reviews, VOD reviews, POV stuff, but there's nothing that's like somewhere in between that's a little bit shorter and more digestible. And the one thing I wanted to kind of try and do was I feel like there's nothing close to like Sports Center if you're a fan of like American sports. There's nothing
I'm over ESPN.
Yeah, like for me, I grew up watching NBA Tonight or MLB Tonight or, you know, after the NFL games in the evening, and you get all the big stories for the day, the score lines, a couple of the narratives that are coming out. And I feel like that feels a really good niche for Counter-Strike because when there's a big tournament, there's so many games going on that if you're coming home from work or you're just not someone who's dedicated to watching it for whatever reason, it's very easy to miss out on stuff. So bringing that into like a more digestible format where I still take some time to go deep where it's appropriate, but also develop the storylines and make it all so it's like max like 25 minutes and you've got what happened for the day. I felt like that was definitely a niche that people weren't exploring at all.
Did anything like, benefit from your study in college or anything like that? Like, did you study like into media and editing and anything like that? Or what do you study at college?
Oh, dude, I wish I had actually. I think one of my big regrets is I didn't take like more classes in high school about learning Photoshop or learning how to use Adobe products. I'm pretty much entirely just self-taught along the way from all the various stuff I've done on YouTube over the years. I edit everything in DaVinci Resolve, which is a free editor that came recommended to me by my uncle. My uncle works in television editing for E! Network, and that's what they use in his industry. So that came recommended to me, and that's what I've been using for all my videos. And I just kind of learned as I go. Like everything was just like one small step at a time. It would have been way easier if I had taken the time to do more stuff in school. But I went in for business administration because I was working for my dad at the time. And then I just I fell out of school the year before the pandemic and haven't finished my degree.
Oh, that's all right. I gotta say, you're not the only one in that because I know a few content creators as well that didn't finish their degrees before they became big. And actually, one of them actually did do that because Annie Fachusa, she's a WoW streamer. She did the exact same thing. Like, she had a breakdown during her computer sciences, and she went back and finished it about 10 years later. So, it's one.
Yeah, I definitely want to go back at some point. I'm pretty much almost done. I would probably just go back and do online classes at this point, but I definitely at some point want to finish and maybe take some more creative classes along the way. I enjoyed my time at college, obviously. And like the best classes I took were all not business classes. Like I took painting and drawing, and those were great. And I would definitely go back and take more creative classes if I could turn back the clock.
Also, I was going to say, have you ever put this proposition to any tournament organizers like ESL, Blast, CCT, that like, hey, I can make recaps of your game, put them up same day. What sort of thing will you offer me?
I would say not yet. I think as the channel continues to grow, that's something that I would like to do eventually, because obviously, there is questionability around the copyright when you're using stream footage directly. It's something I've run into an issue specifically with Cologne. And obviously I want to be working symbiotically with the tournament organizers, because the way I see it, my content exists as just a way to boost up what the tournaments are doing, because you guys have the analyst segments, but as we all know, even though the desk segments I think are always really good, the viewership always drops off. And people don't really watch the analyst segments. They're watching the game. Sometimes they're watching like the show matches and some of the skits and stuff.
I was meaning as a secondary product, like you'd be like, hey, some people don't watch all the games, but if you can put a good recap on it, you can hire me as an independent contractor. That's what I meant by it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think like my content exists in a space that doesn't take away from what the streams are doing. It only amplifies what goes on during the tournament. So I think there's a lot to benefit from both sides. My only reason that I haven't reached out yet is that obviously I think it's a scale thing. I think people would look at me and see that like where my channel's at right now, and the channel's doing well and it's growing, but it might be too small for someone like an ESL or a Blast to care about. But I could see like a smaller tournament organizer definitely wanting to work with me.
I'm gonna say overall, I don't think that's an issue, to be honest. Like, if you do good shit and don't have much of a subscriber base, like, subscribers are just numbers. Like, a lot of times in particular, like, people don't have their big breakout off because of one video. Like, it's just consistency of storylines and just refining your craft. And you might find that one video that, you know, everyone likes, and then they just go to your back catalog, and if it's just as good, everyone just watches it. So, you know, I think the subscriber count doesn't number. I think it's really good just to reach out.
Yeah, I think you're right. One thing that I've definitely had to struggle with over time is that on one hand, I'm very confident in what I do and I have a lot of pride in what I do. But sometimes I'm a little bit hesitant to take like that first initiative. Like when the major was happening back earlier this year, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to cover the major and I didn't know how I wanted to cover the major. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and I said, maybe I should just cover the games for the day. He was like, yeah, just do it. Like, whatever you're going to do, just, you know, don't like lay out a plan. Just make the first video and throw it up. And I did the whole major, and that's what's stuck. Like now, like that's what I'm starting to be known for. I've done a lot of other videos since then and branched out and done more like general punditry, like talking about the player break and roster moves and stuff. But had I hesitated to like take that first move, I don't know if I would have done it. So I think you're right. I think it's one of those things that I should just kind of just take that leap and not be so hesitant, which is just, it's an issue that sometimes I have to overcome.
Do you have any like, you know, any contact emails or anything like that already? Like, you know, to just get that done? Because, you know, definitely a lot of people in the industry can help you out, because obviously I watched some of the videos and I thought they're pretty good. They're really good bite-sized chunks. And also, as you said, they're just like kind of like Sports Center, where they just give you a quick update on what's going on, and everyone can benefit from that, because I think esports is getting to a point where, like, back in the day, everyone was like, you know, 5 years younger. It's already happened to the MMORPG community, where everyone has so much time so they can watch this sort of stuff. Now it's getting to the off end where no one has any time, that sort of stuff. Like, the average age has gone up.
Sorry, let's take a quick sip of water. I do have my main primary email that's linked to my account, but the problem is that's my personal email that I set up with this YouTube account like 10 years ago. So I need to go and make a dedicated business email. That's been like one of those things that I've been putting off. But now that like I kind of need to get in contact with ESL to resolve some issues, it's like the first thing I'm doing as soon as Cologne is over. Is getting those business contacts ready. Yeah,
just get a Gmail. Like, just get a business Gmail. That's what I have as well. Easy.
Just set up another one. Like, I have one for my dad's business and one for myself. I just need to make another one.
Super easy. It's easy. It's the easy stuff. It'll take you 2 seconds. I've also got to say, what, you know, other content do you make, you know, other than recap? Do you, like, you said you recap player breaks and stuff like that, and also the roster changes. Like, how do you handle that content differently from obviously the match highlights? Like, where do you go to get that information?
Well, okay, so when the recaps were first doing well, it was, like I said, right after the major, and after the major, there was like a pretty good string of tournaments. There was Chengdu, then there was like the CCT Global Finals, the Bet Boom Dacha, and then that ran into EPL, then Dallas, and then the Blast Spring Finals. So like that like whole block of like 3 months, there was basically no downtime, maybe like a few days at most between like a tournament going on. So I was kept really busy. And then when the player break was coming up, that was the first time where there was going to be, you know, a solid month and a half where there were no tournaments. And so I knew that I would have to try and fill that content gap. And along the way, I would stop and do general videos. Like I still did more videos kind of about the state of the game, some of my own VOD reviews, some of the CS updates as they came out. And then when I realized that the player break was going to be important to cover, I was just getting up every morning. The first thing I'd do was go to HLTV or go to Twitter and see if any roster moves broke, if there were any like big articles. And then as soon as like, the Malbs trade broke to G2, I made a video on that same day right away. And just as soon as the news would come up, I would stop whatever I'm doing. And I'm fortunate enough to work from home, so I have the time. Yeah. So as soon as the news pops up, it doesn't really matter when. I would just stop what I'm doing and try and get a video out like as fast as possible. Yep. And with the player break stuff, I was a very important thing to me because I've always been bad about it, is I try and make things as concise as I can because I know I can spin off and just like go too long on a subject. So like if it's stuff like news, I'm like trying to hard cap myself at like 15 minutes max. I want to be just as quick, informative opinion, and then get out as fast as possible because people aren't going to pay attention too long, especially when you're lesser known. Like I'm not like a Thorin or a Mally Snake. People don't have as much credibility to my opinion, so I have to be as concise as I can be.
Yep. So actually, going to mention that as well because a few people have mentioned that is that at the start you're long as pigs of string, but as you get it, narrow it down bit by bit and refine it, it gets a lot shorter. You talked about this before in particular. You basically switch to making a video if a news breaks out or whatnot. What sort of sacrifices have you had to make? Because I talked about it with Ben the Legend yesterday. Is that what kind of sacrifice do you have to make to be, where you are at the moment as a person who makes highlights and recaps? Like you have to take off work just to get it done if anything breaks. Is that sort of required in the industry to do that sort of stuff to be the top?
I don't know. I think I'm in a very unique position. I'm young. I just turned 25 this year, and I'm very fortunate to live with my family, and my family understands and supports what I'm doing. I've been given this opportunity where, I don't have another job. This is literally what I do every day. Mm-hmm. And my family's behind me. They're allowing me to take this chance to see if I can make this work because they understand that if it works out, obviously economically, I'll be able to make money on it in the long run. But also because like I made it very clear, like this is not just like something that like I'm doing to make money. I'm doing it because I really care about it and I'm passionate about it. And like this is like what I want to do. So I've been able to focus as much time as I can on this, and that's obviously a very privileged position to be in. Yeah. But it does come with its own sacrifices. I stay home, I take care of the house, I cook a lot of the meals for my family, and so like things we have to coordinate stuff like that sometimes. Like sometimes it'll be like 4:00 in the afternoon, and a CS update will drop, and I have to stop everything and go make a video. Someone will have to help me out, cook dinner that night, or take care of the dogs, or something like that. So it comes with its own unique set of sacrifices, but I think it depends on how much the recency matters. If you were someone who was just focused on, say, like, I don't know, making like really good demo reviews of pro teams, then you could probably work a normal job and focus on that at night or in your free time. So I think it definitely depends on how like quick you want to be being first. And I'm lucky that I can really focus on trying to be first.
Yeah, because that's two sets of it. It's also one side being accurate and one side being first. And obviously, I was gonna say Jake Paul, but I was gonna say Jake Lucky's definitely one of those where it's like he always focuses about being first, okay? Mm-hmm. And you got your Richard, your Foreign, and stuff like that. They're always like, let's be correct, kind of thing. So you're leaning more to that aspect for your recaps, and the main reason for that is because the recaps don't really, the facts are already there, pretty much, or you don't have to dig much deeper, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think if you're someone like a Richard, like a Thorin, you have the luxury of not needing to be first because people take your opinion so seriously. Your credibility is like so established that Richard could talk about a tournament a week or two after, and people are still going to watch because they like Richard's opinion, and he's worked for however many 2 decades to establish that kind of precedent. I don't necessarily have that kind of cred yet. Like I don't have that kind of like weight within the content space. So I'm sure like over time, if it continues to grow, and I think it will continue to grow, then you have the luxury of not needing to be as fast. But when you're trying, there's only a limited, like you said, a limited amount of time that people have to watch videos. And there's a limited amount of space for views on a certain topic, especially like news stuff. Yeah. So if you want to be relevant in that space, I think you do have to be fast.
Yeah. Also, I was going to say, would your business administration degree, if you do finish in the end, would that help out if you decided to expand your recap business? Like get people in Europe, get people in Asia, get people in Australia, like doing both tier 1, tier 2. Do you think that would help out potentially where you can manage a lot of people and help, really help you out in your recap where you can cover a lot more than just your 16-hour day, basically?
Yeah, I think so in the long run. And I think what will also help with that is that my first major break, like I said, was in Valorant and working with Skillcapped. And I worked with Skillcapped for over a year. And initially they brought me on just to do commentary, but they taught me quite a lot about kind of the ropes of like search engine stuff, how to like optimize videos, a lot of the back end YouTube stuff that like I just didn't know beforehand. And about a year in, the guy who was the manager for their Valorant channel got an opportunity to work on their League of Legends channel, which was much bigger. Not to say the Valorant channel was small, it was like 300,000 subscribers at the time. So they asked me, because I was like the most senior member at that point, to step up and be the manager. And so for about 6 or 8 months, I was the manager of the channel as well. And that was, 4 editors who were on call pretty much whenever. They had guys who would organize clips for everything. And then I worked with 3 other creators who were doing all the voiceover. So I definitely did that. But at the time, I was definitely younger. I was like 21, 22 at the time. And it got to be overwhelming. There was a point where just juggling all that to upload. At the time, I believe it was 6 videos. Yeah. Actually, it was literally videos. Literally every day. It was 7 days a week. I had to have videos, and I had to have videos scheduled ahead of time, like a week in advance. Yeah. And initially, as I started establishing a backlog with them, it was fine. But then suddenly deadlines started falling through. Content creators wouldn't get stuff in on time. Editors would be missing. And eventually that all just got to be a bit too much for me to manage because the scale was just like much bigger than I was prepared for. Yeah. But I think if I was given the opportunity to do something like that now, I think I would definitely be much more ready to do it, much more experienced in that area.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like all these questions in particular, and you just kept answering them. I'm like, hey, is he reading my mind? But anyways, like what sort of experience and what sort of benefits do you get out of working for Skillcap, especially in a management position? Like, do you still keep in contact with a lot of those editors in particularly, or do you have now contacts in the industry where if you do need anything, you can reach out to them?
No, unfortunately, I haven't been in contact with many of them now. It's been like 2.5, 3 years since then. Mostly because of like the split wasn't super amicable in the end because of how things were starting to kind of fall apart at the seams. But one of the things that was super helpful to me is that one of the editors was very nice. And on the way out the door, I was talking to him about like what I was going to do next. I wanted to go back into Destiny at the time. And I was going to focus a lot more on streaming. And he did my full stream overlay like for free. Did a full stream package for me just as like a send-off gift. And that's the same overlay I still use today, and I use a bunch of the graphics for my YouTube intro and everything. And that was probably like a couple $100 worth of work, and he just did it just as a thank you for working with him. He was very nice. So I mean, I've had that to definitely help me along the way. If they were the way they were set up, everything was very insular. So like I wasn't really talking to anyone who wasn't working on the channel. Like we didn't work with anyone who was really outside of it, and they were a machine. The way that they had things streamlined, Larry was like, we had like, you'd have a topic sheet. I would assign the topics at the beginning of the week, and they had a guy who would go through and get footage from all the big streamers or the tournaments, and they would just put it, and they would build templates that were just basically big blocks of just edited footage. And then the guy would write the script and do the voiceover and leave a bunch of notes for the editor and then submit it to the editor. And then I just had to check with the editor, make sure that it got edited on time and that a thumbnail was made. And then upload it. So like it was a real machine. Like the way they had it going, like it was super streamlined.
Yeah, it's like an absolute process. Like, I always highlight this to people in particular. I'm like, you guys realize like how much effort goes into a video, and you just put it out for me basically. It is a lot. Like a lot of people when they defend, obviously I don't want to go into this topic too much just yet. When they defend people just watching videos and re-uploading to YouTube, and they're like, oh, but they talked for 20 minutes. I'm sitting there going like, mate, do you know how much work goes into it? Like how much hours have you put into a video? Let's say a 20-minute video. How much hours have you put into that of work?
So I can tell you right now, so today's recap was for the quarterfinals of Cologne, and that was 2 best of 3s. And obviously those are really big best of 3s. So like something I try and focus on is I'll focus in a lot more on specific matchups like that are like the bigger matchups of the day, especially when there's only 1 or 2 games. That's a good time for me to go into more detail. And so that video was 20 minutes long. And I got up, the first game started at 6:45 in the morning for me, FaZe versus Saw. I was out of bed, drinking my coffee, watching the game. I took a little bit of a nap, like right around 9 o'clock in between the first and second map. And then got back up, watched the rest of the series. And while G2 versus Mouse was going, I had to wait like an hour, and then the demo files were available. I pulled the demo files, and I was already grabbing footage from the phase game while the G2 game was going. But I didn't finish working on that video, and keep in mind, there goes some breaks in between, step away and do other stuff. But I didn't finish working on that until 6:30 p.m.
So basically, I would say like you've been working for like 12 hours just to get that video out.
I would say probably more like 10 because like I have to walk around, let the dogs out, do some house stuff. You know, I took that nap at 9 o'clock. So yeah, probably like 9 or 10.
Yeah, just put it that in particular. But, you know, you can see the work ethic. You also see the sacrifices as well. You know, obviously your audience obviously probably recognize it as well. Like, first of all, we had to get up at 6:45 a.m., okay? You know...
Yeah, North American times are not kind. During the playing stage in the first part of Cologne, it was 4:40.
Yeah. So, you know, stuff like that. Like, I'm just going to highlight the sacrifices. He had to, like, not focus too much on the G2 game because he had to get the demo files to build up his footage for the video itself. So basically, the G2 in-game has to do two things at once, which can be quite difficult for some people.
Definitely.
As a skill that he learns. And then basically as well, he has to try to balance all the housework and stuff like that while getting the video edited, getting his script done. The process he laid out before, like, it's not easy. So you can tell when anyone gets really pissed off that someone just jacked their footage or jacked their entire video. You can understand because they're getting up at 6 a.m. just to watch a fucking game, which, I'll put it this way, 99% of people who operate in this business, not operate in this business, but in the world wouldn't do this. They'd be like, oh, no, I'm going to stick to my 9 to 5, you know?
Yeah, I think the process will have to change over time because I don't think anything is sustainable to work like that much. But the way I see it right now is that at worst, it's like a week for a tournament. And I think I'll get faster over time. One thing I think we can go ahead and get into is that at the start of this week, after covering the play-in, I woke up to my two most recent recaps were copyright struck by ESL, which had never happened before. And prior to those videos being struck, I wouldn't go through the demos. I was using the stream footage, which we could just go ahead and talk about that. I was using the stream footage, but no audio or anything. And so as far as like I understood and based on what ESL had written out as their own fair use guidelines, my content, which was 100% commentary with no game audio, no caster audio, no analysis audio, would be considered transformative in nature because it is commentary and critique. It's highlighting the games to talk about specific plays. So as far as I would consider, I would say that I was within what ESL would allow, but I still had those videos get struck. So to make sure that I'm as insulated from that issue as possible, because losing the videos is the worst case, right? Because those views are gone. That money those videos made gone, and I'm not going to get them back. I had to switch to downloading the demos. And that added a whole extra bit to the workload because one thing I think people will easily overlook is that Counter-Strike is only as good as it is in terms of a watchability of the product because we have the best observers in the business. And these big tournaments pay a lot of money for people to observe those rounds and make it look as good as it is. So try being your own observer in a demo. Go download a pro match right now off HLTV. Pick like the FaZe versus Saw game on Nuke. And go be the observer and try and time things up to how things are happening in the round. It's really difficult.
Oh, definitely, because I observe my own games when I cast here too, and it's just, it can be so rough because you also have to cast. You also have to put the switches over as well.
And like I have the benefit of being able to watch the games after the fact. So like when I'm going and grabbing footage right now, I'll find the rounds that I want and I'll watch through the round one time to identify kind of like where I want to route out the camera, and then I'll go back and record it and follow the camera the way I want to. So like, if you're an observer live, you're doing all that live. You don't have the benefit of watching the round back. It's crazy the work those guys put in.
Exactly, and they get multiple observers just for that, just in case one observer doesn't capture it. They can get a replay on another one, because I think they have observers for player POVs as well. Because I talked to MC, obviously Michael Capania, he's from Australia, about this as well. And he says like he manages the production now because he used to be the observer back in the day. And he watches a lot of different multiple screens. But also with the copyright issue, you did say how you manage that in the future. Like, how do you manage it for other stuff in particular? Like just making sure you don't take too much, or is it going to be more just stay away from any footage now, or could it be just asking permission instead so you can actually use the footage?
I think in the meantime, the safest way would be that if I'm going to cover a tournament, I should be going to the demos first. But like we talked about earlier, it's definitely like pertinent for me to reach out to the tournament organizers and let them know that I'm doing this, because if they agree and I can just use the stream footage the way I've been using it, that's an incredible boon for me. That makes my life 10 times easier, and that would take a lot of the workload off.
Also,
excuse me.
Also, with receiving the copyright claim in particular, like, what was your first initial reaction to it? Like, what did you do about it? Was it just like, oh crap? Like,
so here's how the sequence went. I rolled out of bed like 5:50 in the morning, barely awake. First thing I did was check my phone because I'd uploaded the recap the night before, so I like to read the comments in the morning. And I just opened my phone, go straight to the comments. First comment I get was, "Yo, did your last 2 videos get struck?" And I was like, "No." And then I read my next notification, "Hey, you've received a copyright strike." I was like, "Oh no." So I had to roll out of bed, desperately try to wake up, and then look at what's going on. And my first and honest reaction, because this does happen, was that it was a false strike, that it was someone impersonating ESL and was trying to hit me for whatever reason, because it just seemed so illogical that I would get hit. And obviously, it's in reality, ESL can do whatever they want. So them striking me is not the most logical thing in the world. But my first thought was okay, I know that other people were uploading footage from Pro League, and I haven't heard anyone else complain about this. If ESL was like mass striking people, it'd be like the top story on HLTV or Reddit. It'd be a huge deal. So I figured it was just me, and it might just be a mistake. So I went through YouTube systems, I disputed the claim, and then I reached out to Richard Lewis over Twitter for his advice, because he's the most prominent journalist in the scene. If anyone was going to kind of know like what the next step would be him. And he gave me some advice. I won't go into any specifics because it's not my place to talk about DMs. But his advice definitely like reassured me that there was going to be a path forward, and that I didn't need to freak out a whole lot. But for that first little bit, like the first half of the day until I heard back, I was freaking out. I was like, what am I going to do? This is like the thing that is really amplifying my channel, and I've grown so much off this, and it would be such a bummer if I just had to like stop and turn tail. And then I remembered, I could just go to the demos, and the demos gave me a way out so I could keep posting through Cologne.
Yeah, because I was actually going to say, some people would be like, oh no, is my content actually original, or am I just borrowing all the content? Because that's a really big precipice when you get that first copyright strike. You're just like, for myself, I'll just be thinking, is my content actually good, or is my content actually good because of someone else's content? Did you have that sort of like crisis of faith, or no?
No, I don't think I necessarily had that reaction, because one thing I was, as much as I'm no copyright expert, I'm not a copyright lawyer, obviously. Being someone who's been involved, like I've been watching YouTube forever, I've seen all of the drama over the years come through that. My understanding of fair use to that point may be, again, very certain that what I'm doing would be at least considered for fair use. Like, I don't see how someone could argue that I was stealing content, other than the fact that I was using what was streamed by ESL. But I think once you dig into it, with all the work I put into the videos, how much editing goes into it, the commentary, I feel like you would have to really go out on a limb to argue it wasn't transformative. So I wasn't worried about that. I was just worried about them hitting the rest of the ESL videos, because once one falls, you never know when the automatism kicks in, and 3 strikes on YouTube and you're done. And being a channel of my size, it's not like I'm going to get a reaction from YouTube on Twitter.
Exactly.
I would have to amplify that through another content creator to have any hope.
Yeah, it's just like a tree falling in a forest. No one really hears it.
Yeah, exactly. I'd just be one of the many trees already dead on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we probably should go to the next stage. I mean, let's talk about Cologne. Let's do that.
Dude, okay, first things first. Every year, it doesn't matter where the scene is at, like what kind of meta we're in. Cologne's always the best tournament every year. I feel like it outside of the majors, Cologne, even a lot of the times, I think is better than some of the majors we've had in the last few years. It just feels like for whatever reason, everybody cares about that tournament. There's no like phoning it in. It's not like a Blast or some of the other like IEM events where sometimes you get teams that are like tired or jet lagged and they won't maybe try as hard. Like, everyone shells out for Cologne. Always produces the best stories, and I think it always produces the best games.
Is it because it's really at the start of the season? Because obviously Katowice, I think, is just after player break, and there's a few tournaments before it, and IEM Dallas is at the end.
I think that's definitely part of it, because it's definitely like everyone's in the swing of it. We've had a few events to like warm up to new rosters and stuff, but I think it's also like, it's one of the few events that I think lives up to like the hype of the prestige. Like, Cologne is one of those majors that always feels, or one of those tournaments that always feels like a major, even when it's not. And it's been a major so many times. I think everyone kind of treats it as like the unofficial third major of the year. So I think teams really want to win Cologne. Like, it feels like winning a major is a good step towards starting an era. Winning a Cologne and a major is like, okay, now we're like, you're really the best team of the year.
Yeah, because like I said, Cologne's got a really good storyline to it as well, because they call it a cathedral. They've got a good nickname. They can build the place up. You go to Dallas and
the pomp and circumstance,
and it's just like, where's their nickname? Where's their build up? Like, there's nothing really iconic where you can point to and be like, yeah, that is Katowice. That is Dallas. There's no culture impact. Yeah, I'm just using that meme, okay? Sorry, well, you can hit me with
yeah, no, I think you're right there. I think Katowice has a little bit more than some of the other tournaments just because it's been around for so long, and obviously it was like the first two majors were Katowice's.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people know Katowice because of the stickers and stuff. So I think Katowice holds up pretty well too. But I think just Cologne is like perfectly placed. It's right at the end of summer, and then the production value is always there, and then the teams just always seem to deliver.
And also I gotta say as well, like, you know, I went to Amsterdam for TwitchCon last year. I could have easily just not last year, 2 years ago. I could have easily just drove to Cologne and watched Cologne. It was like 50 kilometers away, apparently.
Yeah. It's like, I hear it's like situated in a good part of Germany as well. I wouldn't know. I've never left the US. So, I mean, it looks like everything's set up for it to be like the biggest event on the calendar.
Yeah, because I've been to Berlin, Leipzig, and Munich. Because I went to DreamHack Leipzig because one of my EU mates were there, so I was meeting with them. I watched Renegade to get second. But anyways, we go off topic on that. But Cologne overall...
Renegades, wherever they are.
Like, I guess say Cologne overall is really disappointing for the APAC teams, for both FlyQuest and Mongols. Like I say, FlyQuest, they've always had that struggling issue. Just the biggest issue has been obviously the AWPA, and I know everyone harps on about it. I harp on it about it too. I'm like, if Alistair just hits basic shots, I think the issues would go away for FlyQuest. And they'll be a bit more competitive. They won't win the tournament, but they'll be a lot more competitive. Mongos was just flashbacks to their major days where they just choke games they shouldn't be losing and just melt down. It was so depressing to see.
Especially because they had that pop off. Like that match against G2 was like, okay, wait a minute. Are Mongols gonna like beat the like first round exit allegations? Like maybe they're powering up. And then that series against Pain was incredible. It's a really good one to go back and watch if anyone hasn't watched the games.
Is it because you
like sparkling water is making me burp?
Is it because you like Pain, or is it because you like Mongols feel like Pain?
You know, I really think because they played against each other in the play-in, and I think they played against each other in the Blast recently as well. Yeah. When you watch those two teams play, I feel like they're really evenly matched, and they bring like a lot of the best out of each other. Like I feel like in terms of skill, like they're very close. So like when they go, it feels like it's rarely like a blowout. Those teams like they'll go 3 maps and they'll be really close. And then you got like the Brazilians are always popping off and they're really intense and emotional. And it feels like one of the rare times where you see the Mongols really get invested. You see them yelling and screaming too. So it's like you got like 9-10 taking crazy shots with the op left and right, and then Big Azera is just like calling like insane clutches late in the round. And I don't know. I feel like at least lately, they have been super fun to watch play each other.
Oh, definitely. I guess say overall, like I just remember the Mongols video with ESL with, you know, the Cadian, like they hate Cadian, and that, you know, they need to freeze Stabby basically as well. That was pretty good. Overall, like, you know, what do you think is the biggest highlights and the biggest lowlights of IEM Cologne? Well, I'm going to say the biggest lowlight I'm going to say is 9Z and Spirits crashing out early despite their previous performances. But I think the highlight has got to be Na'Vi, because everyone's calling them a fluke and stuff like that. I'm sitting there going, like, you don't fluke Bear Freeze, okay? I think they're overachieving of their roster, but you don't fluke Bear Freeze.
To start off with Na'Vi, I think that you can look back at the major and say that it was a miracle run. The Na'Vi of today would beat the Na'Vi that beat the major, like 100%. They're playing way better as a team. Their map pool's gone better. They are just a demon on Mirage. Like going into tomorrow, I think it's Mouse is playing Na'Vi, and if I'm Mouse, I am not allowing Mirage ever. I'm doing everything in my power to never play them on Mirage, because you're just asking to go down. It's shades of like old Astralis, where like you would play Astralis on Nuke or on Overpass, and you were just guaranteed going down 0-1. Like I would never take Na'Vi on Mirage right now. And they're leveling up at the right time that it feels kind of like a sure-in for them to make the final. But Maus are they're so good and so consistent that I would expect Maus to be competitive in that series. I think the biggest highlight for me of the tournament, even though they just lost, was FaZe Clan, because the way that like FaZe put themselves in position to be like the classic like gatekeeper, the defeater, and the way they took out Liquid was just like so exciting, because it just felt like vintage FaZe, where you couldn't beat this team. It doesn't matter how big the play is. It doesn't matter how many times you clutch until you have that final round, FaZe are a threat to win the game.
Yeah.
And that felt like fully realized against Liquid. And then against Saw too. Like down the stretch, it felt like Saw were going to crumble. I talked about it in my recap today. They were in the overtime. It was I think it was their first round on CT side. Saw the FaZe push out. They do an A push with Brokey and Frozen out hut. And Roman is by the squeaky door, and he looks at Mini, thinking he's getting pushed from Mini, but it's his teammate. Right as they push out a hut, and he gets caught with his pants down, and they lose the A site. And it's like, okay, Saw have played this incredible series to the point. They've held their nerve this entire time, but like, are they cracking? Because FaZe just keep coming at them. They won't go down. It's like that like unkillable quality that makes FaZe so exciting to watch.
Yeah, they're like a very gritty team. Like, they just don't say die ever. They're very gritty. They will grind you down. I mean, this is not new for FaZe, because FaZe have been doing this for 2 years. I remember Twist complaining about burnout, and I'm looking at their previous matchups like, yeah, because you guys keep going to like low bracket eliminations, BO5s that go on for ages, BO3 that go on for ages. I'm like, yeah, I'm surprised you guys haven't burned out yet.
Yeah, it's the classic Kerrigan team. They may be the best in the world, but they're never 2-0ing anybody. It's always a little exciting. I think that's why they're always so fun to watch, is because you can see how good they are. And like, Kerrigan's the best in-game leader for my money. He's the GOAT. Yeah. Like, I don't even think it's really close. But like, at the same time, it doesn't have that like overwhelming quality of like Astralis, where like you'd watch Astralis play, and at a certain point, it's like, okay, you guys are just gonna 2-0 your way to the finals. We'll see if someone could do something there. But like, it's just, you want another series? Okay. You're like 57-0 on Nuke? Okay.
Do you think,
like, there was a certain like banality to just how strong Astralis were, and FaZe have never really been that kind of team.
do you think the Hunnen effect is going to happen to Kerrigan as well, where Kerrigan's stats is not going to justify how good of an IGL he is? Or will he retire before
Maybe, but I don't think you hit that point for a while. I think Kerrigan has shown that if you're so like that like 0.8 HLTV rating, and you can see the effect that he has in terms of the calling, then you can make it work.
Yep. And also, I mentioned a low light. What was your low light of IEM Cologne to play in so far, or even the matches?
God, what? See, I'm kind of like a congenital optimist. It's hard for me to like really like point out a team and be like, yeah, you guys did that wrong. Except for VP. I will go out of my way to hate on Virtus Pro every single time. As long as James stays an in-game leader and Electronic stays on this team, I am so out on Virtus Pro. I hate this roster. I think they're wasting everybody's time, and Electronic is probably the biggest check stealer in Counter-Strike right now.
I gotta say, I'm a big Virtus Pro fan. I was not hyped by Electronic when they put Electronic in. Okay, I was just like, he ruined Cloud9, okay, obviously, but then again, I think it's Cloud9.
They should be so good. It's so frustrating.
But like, I know there is place Mir, and I know Mir has big issues with attitude and whatnot, because they always talked about Spirit as well when he played for Spirit, because like us at ESA Prem EU, and that's what the rumor was. He's such a good player, but emotional control was very hard for Mir, and that's what happens there in particular. But when they got Electronic, I was sitting there going like, I don't think this is a good choice, because he went to Cloud9 as an IGL and failed, and they had to get Boomichin, and they had to try and rebuild that entire team where Cloud9 fell apart. I'd rather them get someone like Resource or someone like that in that roster, pick up from Aurora, and have them try instead, because you've already got Flitz and Fame, and
the firepower is already so good. Yeah,
there. Like, you can have a young guy come in and see what happens. And I think
now I'm not initially the biggest hater on getting Electronic in theory, because I think people are going to kind of miss because they blew up so shortly after. There's a weird time, like the beginning of the year, where that Cloud9 roster with Axel, Boomich, Electronic, where they didn't have a primary opper, that was actually like low-key one of the most interesting teams to watch in the top 10. Like, they were actually really good for the fact that they were playing no op, and they were kind of like, I feel like at the time they were like right at the turning point where I think they were kind of like making the style start to work. Like, if they had stuck it out for like another few months, I think they were close to a breakthrough, because in CS2, especially at the time before they made the first set of economy changes with the T-plant, I think that was the perfect time to bring back 5 rifle, like that classic Swedish style of Counter-Strike. And I think Cloud9 were really close to like making it work, and then the roster blew up. And Electronic, he was like up and down. He was tournament to tournament, wasn't performing super well. But that team as a whole was really exciting to me. And when I heard that he was going to VP, my first thought was this is going to be exactly what the team needs, because my biggest criticism of James is the slowness. I think you can play slow, but you need to play slow like in a deliberate way. There are too many times where they're just like, they're out of the round after one pick. They're just going straight to the save.
Yeah. Is that kind of different to Caden's style, where Caden is, if someone gets picked off, we stack it. Now with VPs, like if someone gets picked off and it's not beneficial, you know, obviously they're very cold and calculating. I call it like the Anaconda, because they cut so much sound, you have no idea that they're wrapping around you, and by the time you realize that you're dead.
Yeah, you can play slow, but you have to play slow to a purpose. And if you're not trying to make a move at any kind of map control, you're just you're tilting windmills. Like, you're just wasting time. And it'll come down to like 30 seconds left, and you have to force a site take, and you haven't drawn any utility. You haven't found any like lurk presence or intel, and then you're just having to go into a bomb site or save.
I feel like about a T site execute, right?
Yeah, and then I think also they were way too hesitant to go for retakes on the CT side. They would save. Even if it was like 3v4, they would just not go for the retake ever, which is something they still do, which I just absolutely hate. I understand on like Inferno, if it's like B site 4v3, yeah, go for the save. That makes sense. But they'll be on like Dust 2 and it's a 3v4. They've just lost the A site and they won't even try. Like they'll go save right away, which is like it pisses me off. I think it's just like you got to try at some point. In MR12, there's so limited amount of time that you don't. It's not MR16. You don't have those extra rounds to work with. If you continue to concede rounds, the game's going to be over. Yeah. And I feel like James just like doesn't have that ability to make that switch. And there were some points where Virtus Pro would shift and be aggressive with electronic, and then they would look really good, and then their CT sides would still be awful, and then they wouldn't win the game. So like it feels like the team is split two ways, and then electronic and James just aren't performing. But those guys were both top 10 players for quite a while, and in CS2 they just haven't made the jump.
I think James got to shift to a bit of more medium term sort of thinking as well. But I think overall, like, you know, his style obviously a lot different and a lot more less fancy to watch. I still think it does work in a way. T side, I'm gonna say, definitely needs big fix up, because they've not really got any presence, and you can't play the, you know, cut all sound and just make the T's make a play and see if they make a mistake. You can't do that on T side because they're not going to push.
Yeah, I think also they were probably the worst, the team that was worst off with Overpass going away. They were great on Overpass.
Exactly, yeah.
Up until it got removed, and their map pool is currently atrocious, and they don't play Dust too well. So like they've just lost like the thing that they were really good at, which was beating teams on Overpass. So they haven't. I don't think they've taken the time, even during the player break, to like find a new map to work on. Like, I don't know, they're not trying to specialize on a nuke or an Inferno or a Mirage or anything. It feels like they're just not very good at any of the maps.
Like I said, Overpass in particular, because you can just put one AWP on A and that's it, and that's Jame, and Jame will laser you. If you come down short, come down long without any utility, Jame will get the opening pick.
Yeah, and it would have worked great with Electronic too. Electronic is a fantastic Overpass player. You know, he would be down the B side. He would take aggressive through the tunnels into sewer. He'd push behind you through connector. Like when he was on Na'Vi, they played fantastic Overpass, him and Simple. So I think it would have worked out great had it stayed in the map pool.
And also not to mention as well, like that connector position in particularly is so important for the CTs to secure, even though it's really hard to secure it. If you secure it, the Ts can't rotate to A and B very quickly, and you just can win rounds and force them to save.
I think my other thing, and I want to make a video about this when Cologne ends. I think the biggest cursed chalice in Counter-Strike is IGL/op. If you're an IGL and an opper, I don't think you can be anything more than like maybe a top 10 team. I think there's an upper limit when you're having to share those two duties, and the op is like way too important. Like it takes so much to be a top 10 opper in the world and to be a top 10 IGL. I don't think you can do both. The only times it's worked have been like, you know, Nitro on VP or Nitro on Liquid, and Nitro wasn't, you know, he was maybe a top 10 opper in 2019, but he wasn't like he wasn't like a world-class opper. And obviously Fallen in the Brazilian lineups, and Fallen was really great when they were winning the majors, but I think we all saw the drop-off was pretty quick. Like it's too many resources onto one person.
Are you leaking new moves now? Are you saying Nitro's going to VP?
No. See, that's the thing about making videos, right? I get to cut out all the mistakes. It's great. I misspeak all the time. It's terrible.
Don't worry, I misspeak all the time as well. As long as you have the confidence, you're saying it correctly, and keep the flow, it's all fine, okay?
I'm an American. Being confidently wrong is something we learn at birth. Like, when you're an American, you're taught that in grade school. Be confidently wrong in everything, and no one will question you.
Not wrong. Actually, I would say overall, like, it's actually kind of interesting, because obviously Semper Fi, which is one of the Australian teams now, have picked up Keen, and Keen's an IGL AWP in particular. Do you think, like, you know, it depends on the style of AWPing? Like, you can't have a Monacy AWP IGL because Monacy is aggressive as hell. Is it more of the play style, like where you can have a passive AWPer in IGL? You talked about Nitro, like he wasn't the greatest AWPer, but he was a good IGL, and he was probably more passive. Could that work where you have a passive AWPer IGL rather than an aggressive one, like Monacy, Brokey? Trying to think of another aggressive IGL AWPer. Anyway, but either way, you get my point.
Yeah, I think so, but I still think you're capped out. I think that like one of the benefits, I think why people like Kerrigan and Apex are able to have so much staying power despite not being so great as individuals anymore, is that there's a certain point where an IGL can just say, hey, on the T side, I'm just going to throw myself into space. I'm going to die. I need you guys to trade me. And then I'm just going to pilot from the spectate. I'm just going to start playing the RTS and I'm going to move around the units on the board. And if you're the op, you can't do that because that's too many resources. You need to stay alive. You need the op impact. So it can definitely work. But my big thing is that if it doesn't work, now you have to make 2 roster moves, which is the spot that Liquid were in, right? By cutting Cadian, you couldn't just replace Cadian with one person. You need to replace Cadian with an IGL and an Opper, which put them in that weird spot where now Twist is the IGL and they found Ultimate. And Ultimate's been a great pickup, but obviously Twist is a huge asterisk going forward with whether or not he's going to be able to break into being a top-level IGL.
Well, if Device can be a star player IGL, that means Twist can be a star player IGL.
Well, here's the thing, though. I think we're seeing that Astralis is starting to cap out.
Yeah.
Like
I'm making that as a jocular comment, okay?
Yes. Yeah, well, no, but I think it is interesting because when Astralis, they first made the roster swap, we expected Device to have the drop-off because we think the drop-off is inevitable with being an IGL, but his numbers have stayed really high. But I think I was listening to Thorin, I think he was talking about this on Hot Take Point Made with Kassad and Maui the other day. There is this benefit when you're the IGL and you're like a former star player, of it's clear you're just calling your own shot. Like when I watch Astralis, it feels like they're writing the plays around Device, getting the space to get his work done with the omp. And that's great for Device. And when it works, they look really good against lesser opponents. But you start playing the more tactically legit teams. You play against, Maus and a Shuhei, and Navi and Alexi B, even Apex and Kerrigan. When they're starting to call more for the team, I think that shows the weakness. And one of the things that Liquid ran into in the FaZe series was once they got hit in the teeth on Mirage and their A and B strategy didn't work and Twist couldn't call around himself, they stopped having strats. They stopped executing. They started trying to look for miracle plays. And next thing you know, you're blowing an 11-1 lead.
Yep. Also, I was going to say in particular, like, with Cologne, I'm going to say overall, like, is it still good those top 6 teams are just going to make a lot of these tournaments? You got your Mouse, obviously Spirit had a bad tournament, Vitality, FaZe, G2, I'm forgetting the last team, Na'Vi. Are those 6 teams still going to be in every playoffs for every major, basically? Because I feel these 6 teams, it's always one of those 6 teams will win the tournament. Like, they're so close.
I feel like out of all of those, Na'Vi to me feels like the most consistent team. Like I feel like you'll see Na'Vi and Vitality in pretty much all of the major playoffs. I feel like they're a shoo-in to make it through the group stage unless ZywOo is just like missing or like something really terrible happens to Na'Vi in the group stage. Those teams feel like you're going to see them a lot. I think everyone else has shown that there's cracks and there's inconsistencies. Like, yeah, G2 rolled over everybody who wasn't the Mongols, but then they played Mouse today, and you saw that when Mouse had the tactical advantage and the fragging became more normal on G2, G2 couldn't keep up because their strats aren't good enough. So I think there's a lot of parity in the top 10, actually, where, we could roll up to a tournament and Complexity, Elige has like a godlike tournament where he's, at like a 1.4 rating, Grim has a good tournament right behind him, and suddenly Complexity are making a playoff run. Liquid have shown that they can compete and play with the biggest teams. So I think it's a matter of who's going to have the best tournament, which I feel like no duh, obviously. But it feels like you have teams that are going to be very inconsistent tournament to tournament. So outside of Navi and Astralis, I think it is a toss-up for who's going to make a run.
Yeah. Also, I was going to say, with Saw in particular, what do you think about Saw? Because I think Saw have a very good coach, I'm going to say, because that roster in particular was absolutely doggo at the major, and they crumbled in crucial rounds. I remember that 0.1 second defuse against VP, which crashed him out of the major by Jame.
Yep. So my understanding is that they had a coach change recently, like in the last few months, and that's what's turning around, because obviously they peaked really high at the major where they went through the challenger stage of the major, and they were like the first team into the upper bracket. They beat Cloud9, and that was the first time I really paid attention to. Was like, oh my god, like, who are these guys? Like, they're actually like breaking through. They took Cloud9 down, and they look poised to make a run at the major. Then obviously they lost that first series. I can't remember who they played, but they lost their first series after going undefeated, and then just crashed out, lost every tournament after that. Oh, those are my dogs barking. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Sorry about that.
Did they do it NRG where they like, we can play for bonus points and then crashed out on free?
Yeah, I don't know, but like, and then like the next 3 tournaments I saw showed up to, they like bottom out, didn't win a single series. So I think everyone was assuming that that they were going to be just this like flash in a pan. They made this one major run and it was really cool, but they probably weren't going to do anything else. And then whatever changed with the coaching and the way they relooked at their tactics, watching them play at IEM, it reminds me a lot of when ENTS broke out in 2019. You have this team that you don't really know the names. There's no like superstar player here that's like better than like a top 20 player, but the tactics, the team play is like elite, like best, like top 5 team in the world worthy tactics, where they are playing so good as a unit and calling so well that they get like better than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and that just like that's so fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I'm gonna say something like Danish was like Barry's a very good coach. Like Barry's incredibly good, and they also made the jokes about Barry's plays. Like Barry's plays not that great, but his coaching is on meds. It was a joke. Yeah, even though Barry got an ace in one of the rounds, it was that he was not a great player.
I think it's very telling that I think in every interview they've done in these upset series, I've been like, yeah, we prepped really hard for this. Like, we knew they wanted to pick Inferno. Like, they said after they beat FaZe, like, they said, yeah, we knew FaZe wanted to pick Inferno first, so we really prepped it. And then they stomped FaZe 13-6. I mean, they literally just, FaZe couldn't do anything in that game. And then when they beat G2, they beat G2, right? All the games are starting to run together.
Yeah, they're just when they had their one of British. They beat G2. It was G2, Mongols, and then they lost an RV.
Yes, thank you. So so when they had their first upset early on against G2, it was like that nuke game was incredible. Like they literally, I rate G2's nuke really highly because obviously Nico's like the best outside player of all time, and we have him working up a Muncie. It's like you can't even get any map control when you're on the T side. Yeah. And then I watched Saw's T side, and they were just walking circles around them, ramp control, splitting into upper. They would throw fake utility outside and then go secret late. It was just like, it was crazy. Like the protocols were just so consistent. And then U-Jerks has such a good eye test, man. Like the way he's leading some of these rounds, he's getting these first kills with the rifle, and he looks so consistent and calm. And you have Erados as like that X factor, very aggressive player right behind him. And then obviously, you know, New Tiras has like clutch of the year today. Yeah. Like that 1v4 on the B bomb site, that's iconic, dude. That was incredible.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you know, what he did was just miraculous, especially against FaZe, because FaZe is one of those teams where they will eventually grind you out. And the fact that he was able to do that on the B bomb side, which people say it's really easy to retake. I don't view the B bomb side on Nuke as being really easy to retake, but it is.
Yeah, I don't know what universe they're living. The easy retake? Are you kidding me? Yeah. There's 1,000 angles and on 2 different levels. Like, good luck. Like,
but either way, like, you know, that's incredible. The fact that he held it by himself. And also got to say, like, you know, they're beating a team like FaZe. Also, not to mention as well, like, these players have been all around for ages. You know, Roman, Story, U-Jerks, Aristodos, I think it's the newest addition as well. And it's just like, I've seen them, casted them in ESL Prem back in EU. They weren't that great. They had this one-off tournament where they did really well, got to ESL Pro League, then bundled out. And, you know, they're flashing the pan as you talked about. Like, they had one before the major run. And I was just sitting there being like, oh, they're not going to make it very far. Still the same roster. What's the new tricks that they generated? And yeah, you know, they've made it really far now, the versing Vitality.
Yeah, I think what you can look at, and I think this is really telling, this is what I'm always looking for, is that you look at like Liquid had a very similar like miraculous run going back to the Blast groups the other week, right? But you look at what Liquid did, and their wins were insanely dominant, but it was because the individuals were going so hard. Like Ultimate just starting off as like a 1.3 player with the op in his hand, taking all these crazy ego peaks and hitting all these shots. You look at that and you're like, is this repeatable? Yeah. And I don't know. Is he going to regress to the mean, or is he just going to suddenly be a top 5 opper? That remains to be seen. But when I watch what Saw have done here, it does look like this formula is repeatable because they're playing like really good, like consistent Counter-Strike. Like I highlighted today in this recap, you watched their Inferno T rounds against FaZe, and there's nothing remarkable going on. They were drawing out utility, and then late they would go A or B. They would take their trades and take the bomb site. Like the protocols are just so simple, but everyone is working together, and there's rarely any gaps. And then you get like that little bit on top of like Mutiras having a great game with the clutches, or users getting great multi kills, or Story doing great with the op, and like that's what pushed them over the edge. But they should be able to repeat this formula. Like there's no reason why this level that we've seen can't be somewhat consistent.
Yeah, it's just more like a simple, like, you know, just put the ball in the back of the net kind of thing. You know, that's all you have to do.
Yeah,
it's just get the bomb on the side. Just, you know, get the bomb on the side, get a favorable trade, get a 3-for-2 trade, get to the post points. What we need to do, let's say if Inferno, for example, an A site, what you need to do, you need smoke off library, make sure the rotating player can't come in to intervene. Where are the 2 players or 3 players going to be on the site? Have they got quad control? If they don't have quad control, there's going to be 1 in pit 100%. We can molly that out, fuck up their crossfires, get in there, put the bomb down. How do we make it, advantageous for us in particular? Like, would there be a player on site? Where would what their habits are? Was there be players still lurking in apartments? What we do here? And then that's how we do it. And the likelihood of the positions as well.
Yeah. I think going back to the Inferno game, like, it really stands out to me how they started off the game on the CT side, because FaZe wins the pistol, they win the force buy after, but the thing that starts Saw's run is Udrix saves an M4 on round 2. And then the very next round, Udrix picks up a 4K on B, while everyone else is saving, and that kickstarts their run. They win the next like 6 of 7 rounds off the back of that. So like that discipline where Udrix could have tried to get more exits or play more aggressively on the second round, but he saw that I need to pull back, I need to save, we need this gun, we can make something work off the back of this. That starts their whole streak of rounds, and the round afterwards, they play very safe on A. They don't contest into apartments. They don't give Rops any opportunity to make any picks work in his playground. Like, don't give Rops any room to work in the apartments. They let them push onto A. They dissect the picks. They shut down the A take. And then you're off to the races. Like, you've neutralized FaZe's economy in 2 rounds.
Yeah, like I said, it's the most importance of, in playing in general, is just most importance of saving. Is that sometimes saving that one rifle, especially the M4A1S, on B, on Banana. I am assuming got a 4K on Banana, because that's the one where they all line up and the M4S can just shoot through them. Either way, it
was a 2K on Banana, and then he got 2 more when FaZe pushed the site late in the round.
Okay, either way, I was going to say, there's so many bottlenecks in B where the M4A1S is just Swiss cheese, and you can get potentially more rifles. So if you get 1 or 2 kills and the AK drops slightly, ahead of the boost area or in front of car, you can just squirrel that AK array, and that's snowball territory, basically. And also on the other side, it's so important to make sure you get rid of guns as well as a T side player. Like chucking the M4 over the fence, making sure they can't recover it, because as you said before, that one M4 being saved changed the entire fucking game.
Yeah, it changed it. Saw 1.5 because of that M4, like straight up. Like, it starts their streak. It limits FaZe's momentum in terms of their economy. Everything starts because Udrix was able to save that round. And obviously, like, it's something I think about a lot because I just play regular matchmaking. I'm very much just a regular player of the game. So when I'm watching these games, I'm taking notes. I'm trying to take mental notes of stuff like this. Like, how many times have you been playing a matchmaking game and everyone refuses to save? Everyone's trying for the clutch. But it's like, if you save 5% more, maybe you win way more of your games than you would be right now. Like, it feels so simple, and it's because it is, and it's because people don't do it that it stands out when it happens. Like, those simple protocols, they add up.
And then also, not to mention the counter protocols as well. Like, a lot of the AU players talked about as well, chucking away a weapon, making sure that the CTs couldn't pick that up, or even protecting that weapon as well, or even throwing a HG to make sure the weapon comes closer to you guys so that people can't pick it up after the bomb's blown up.
Yeah, Counter-Strike is the beauty of Counter-Strike is that the smallest details really matter. And the more you play the game, the more that reveals itself. And watching a team that is very much the underdog, right? I mean, it's FaZe Clan, you're on stage. Kerrigan is like the stage master, the way he works the crowds.
Definitely,
and they're playing just such good Counter-Strike and like rising up to the moment. Like that's the beauty of it, man. When you get an upset that feels super justified, it's just like it's the best part of the tournament.
I was watching Garrigan at IEM Sydney, and the man, like, all he was doing was just like, telling the crowd every time FaZe run around, like, he's like always just composing. He's just got the the maestro aspect, basically. He was just telling the crowd what to do.
Yeah, as the kids say, he's got aura.
Also, as well, I was meant to highlight as well, like, I think Gump from Mindfreak, one of the Australian players, talked about this. Like, he taught like a lot of the minute factors to like Pain, one of the up and coming AU AWPers as well. Like, the tiniest aspects matter so much. And I think I've talked about throwing the weapons over and stuff like that. But my favorite highlight I've ever seen of an AK being recovered was on Nuke, where Cadian, I think, was stuck at Silo because they lost a round. They're trying to save something. And Sush had a pistol in secret, but couldn't come out because obviously they didn't have mini control or heaven control. So, obviously if they go outside, they're going to get picked off. So what Cadian did, because of an AK, he had an AWP, of course. There was an AK in front of, in front of Silo, but closer to secret. So he threw a HE grenade, and that flung the AK all the way to secret for Sush to pick up. And it was like a Spider-Man sort of thing. and I just saw this AK come flying to fucking Sush, and I'm like, what happened?
A gift from God.
Yeah, like literally just like it was like Spider-Man. Like you just hooked that AK to him. It was the most amazing play. And that's what I really want to highlight. Like he got a net plus 2400 benefit from getting that AK to Sush, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's small things, right? I remember, I wish I clipped it for my stream. I was playing on Nuke a couple weeks ago, and it was like an eco push A on the T side, and we got the A side control. We killed a guy in heaven, and his AK was sitting like right on the edge of the rafters, like half of it was sticking over.
Yeah.
And I was trying to shoot it with the Glock to like get it to knock over, and the AK shot up, bounced off the wall, and then kicked over by the ladder. And I was like, it was so close to banking onto the site. It's like you don't think about the situation sometimes, but it's like, that gun knocks down. That's so much. It's so much difference for us being able to finish off that eco round. Whereas now we're still on pistols. They could retake easily, and it's just like those little things. They add up way more than people will give them credit for.
Yeah, that's what happens in IEM Cologne. It's like these little things that add up so much. Like a lot of people look at the clutches and stuff like that, but it's always like beginning 2 to 3 rounds earlier. A lot of times where they've built up that economy to even create that moment in the first place.
Yeah, another good example of that was Mao's versus G2 on Mirage. Mao's, I think the best round of that game was round 10. They were on a Tech 9 buy on the T side, and they rush A. And Mao's are a super slow team usually. They don't usually rush sites like that. But they did like a slight delayed A take. It was like 20 seconds to the round. They just burst out, got all the Tech 9 kills. They just shut G2 down. And then importantly, even though CT was smoked, Jimfat and Zershin pushed straight through CT to hunt down the G2 players, because if they waited and just played site, which I think most people would be inclined to do, like play the bomb in that situation, because even though they were up 3v4, I think it was, they don't have the gun advantage, so G2 could attempt the retake, but they play aggressive behind a flashbang and catch G2 like all 3 in spawn, and they get all 3 of the kills. If they didn't play that aggressive, G2 probably had time where they could have considered saving, and then the next round is super different because G2, they still have an AWP, an AK, and M4. But you took all those guns off the table by taking that extra initiative to take that map space. And also, like taking that extra step in the map control and the post plant, that's the difference maker between winning the round or not. It's so easy, and you see it so much like when you play your own games where people will just are so content to sit in the same 5 spots. But taking that like calculated risk to push through a smoke, push into an off angle, those are the things that can just shut down a team. And obviously Mao's, I mean, just ran over G2. Like the tactics on their T side were so legit.
And also not to mention as well, like it plays to your benefits of the gun itself. Like Tech 9 is really good at fast-paced blitzing. 2 tap the head, you can just control the site. Rotators can't even get there; they're just too slow. And also, that flash through the smoke as well. Tech 9's so strong at it because the Tech 9 is a very quick weapon.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's playing to your advantage. You're down to Tech 9s and a Galil. You're facing full bot CTs. You have to play to those weapons' advantage. You don't want to be stuck behind Firebox taking shots at stairs. Yep. Like, you don't want to be in that position because that's going to favor G2. And you have to respect the fact that G2, they're maybe not having the greatest game, but you never know when they're going to lock in. Like Nico, Malbs, Munacy, whoever, they're liable to do something amazing at any moment. You can't take that for granted.
Yeah, and that main win condition particularly is not really in snacks. It's if Munacy, Hunter, Malbs, and I mentioned Munacy twice, Nico can light it up, basically. Like, if they can light it up, the world's on fire, the game's over, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the most unfortunate part for G2 is that Nico went from being, like, the best player in the world to just being there. Like, he was, like, 1.4 for the tournament. I think he was, like, right around 1 for that series. So if Nico plays even, like, 10, 15% better, I think we're talking about a very different outcome. But Mao's just played to their win conditions. Like, they knew that tactically they had the advantage. And then Torzy is just a monster with the op in space, and Zershin is so good at multi-killing. Like, I think people really underrate Mouse as a team, and I don't know why, because every time they show up, they do something spectacular. Like, they're one of those teams that, like, I think is comfortably, like, number 4 or number 5 in the world, but, like, their ceiling is, like, a number 1 potential. They just haven't, like, quite gotten there yet. And when you see them working like this, it's like, man, Shuhei is so young, but he's already so good as in-game leader. Jimfat's probably the best anchor in the game. And then Torzy, Zershin, they can hang with anybody. Like, when they're all playing together, they're almost like they have that same quality that I talked about with Saw, where they are better than the sum of their parts. Like, they become a much better team than the individuals on paper, but then also their individuals are really good still.
I'd say better than Sush, though. I think Sush is a really good B-side anchor as well not B-side. He's a really good anchor for Heroic, but do you think he's just tapered off a bit?
I think just Jim Fad's just like he's peaking right now. I think based on the stats, he's like one of the he's got to be rating wise like one of the best anchors in the top 10. I just honestly I've always rated him really well, and then I heard it on the cast, and they said a few times on the desk that they were considering him for the best anchor in the world. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Also, I was going to say,
and it sounds really attractive when you say it.
Also, going to say, like, I remember Torres used to pay for a team called Budapest 5 back in ESA Advanced, and he would carry holiday games. He's just ultra fucking aggressive. Met him at IEM Sydney as well. Then you got Exertion. Exertion was just so hungry to get the pro seed. He was like, help me learn. I need to learn more kind of thing. Like, he was so lean on mouse decks. Like, he was taking every opportunity to just learn more about the game. And, like, it's really shown now that he's just absorbed everything like a fucking sponge. Jim Fat has always been touted as being a really good anchor, really good aimer as well in Finland. I remember him, I've never casted him, but I remember the Finnish scene talking up him a lot. Shui, I saw him in Game of Legion when he was IGL there, and I had no idea Mouse actually loaned Shui to Game of Legion, which blew my mind. I was like, holy moly, like, Mouse were a genius to not sell him, because that would have been a whole different story. And
think about that ripple effect too, because right after Shuhei leaves, they get Snacks like a month or two later, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and now Snacks on G2 because of what he did in Gamer Legion. So if Gamer Legion stuck with Shuhei, where would Snacks be? G2 would not have an in-game leader right now, or we'd still be with Hooksy.
I think Hooksy's pretty decent, but I just think in that sort of team, Hooksy can't really enact his style because G2's win conditions is really strange compared to all the other teams. G2's win conditions in their star power. It's not in their tactical advantage, funnily enough. That's how I feel about it.
That's why I said they remind me a lot of like the early Swedish teams, like 2014, 2015, like Fnatic, NIP, where that classic like pub Swedish style, where like we're just calling defaults. All right, get right. Can you go do something amazing, please? Except that now it's just Nico, and this is what Nico's done his entire career: is I am Nico. You are going to respect me, or I will make you bend the knee. And Muncie is just such a freak right behind him that they look so good when they're both playing at like full tilt.
Are you looking at another one? Another move? Ime? Is Ime got a thing? Ime Nico? I'm Nico?
Oh, no. I cannot confirm or deny. Navi may be trying to acquire every player on Earth. Simple is going to form his new team with Nico, Emma. They're going to be the biggest team to ever exist.
Yeah. You know, for G2, I'm Nico, and then like have the names like line up as a sentence.
Yeah, no, I understand.
What do you think about Broline in particular for Mouse? Because Broline, he was absolutely shit on NIP and fell off of Fnatic, and now he's come up to
man.
Like, how's this? Like, how do you think this worked for him?
I felt so bad for Brolin because when he originally came into Fnatic, what was it, like 2016, 2017?
He was good.
He looked really good initially. Like that was towards the end before Olafmeister went to FaZe, and that was like the last breath Fnatic where like Krims was still really good. Olaf could occasionally do it. And then Brolin was like that young X Factor, and he had a bunch of great series when he broke out. And then obviously just as Fnatic faded away, so did he. So I wonder if it's just that MOUZ might be one of the best like drafting organizations in Counter-Strike maybe ever. Like their eye for talent development just feels like a step ahead of everybody else.
Definitely.
I mean, how many times has MOUZ done this where they've just taken a player that you've never heard of and all of a sudden they're doing great in MOUZ Academy or on the main team?
Oh, exactly.
Like, and they had the forethought to get Kerrigan after FaZe. They let Kerrigan develop everybody into just they developed into fucking so good after that. Picked up Robs when everyone thought he was a cheater. Yeah, like it seems like MOUZ as an organization is just like one of those teams where you don't think of them as like a tier 1 organization, but they've got to be in the running for the best run team in the league, in the world. Probably like right next to Navi.
Yeah, let's think about it. They got Frozen, they got Robs, they got MHL, which is now obviously in Red Talon. Who else? They've also got their entire team at the moment from the academy. So Jim Fat, Xertion, Broline, Torzi, Shui. Like
they're basically the only successful academy side. Like all the other academy teams, I feel like haven't developed anything.
I'd say Young Ninjas of ZTR, but they didn't use them properly. That's what I feel. They didn't use some of their academy players that they had really properly.
Yeah, but ZTR still has time to break out. I think he's actually someone in the next few years who's really going to establish himself.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, there's some academy teams that use it really well. I think that's your point, basically, is MOUZ used the academy team really well, but the other teams didn't.
Yes, MOUZ is like the closest to in baseball in the MLB
Yep.
Like the way that like the MLB develops the minor leagues,
Yep.
like the way they develop talent up through the different levels of minor leagues. They're like Mals are the only team that's actually taking talent from their academy team and putting them on the main roster and then like actually getting value out of them. It feels like the other teams is just kind of like a holding tank to sell players off.
You know what? The main thing is I'm just loving it because a lot of these players I've casted in advance, especially Torsey, I just love it that he's getting the tier 1 recognition that he deserves.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at like this, obviously we're getting into speculative territory. If they go on tomorrow and like they make a finals run, if they beat Na'Vi, then surely Torsey's like the next best candidate for like MVP of the tournament. Because like if Mouse is to beat Na'Vi, it's gonna be because Torsey is like the main guy.
Yeah, it's gonna be a hard one though because Mouse, like it's kind of like Heroic over again in Astralis, where you said it before, better than some of their parts. All the ADRs are so similar and ratings are so similar.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for them is map pool. Na'Vi again, like they have to ban Mirage. I don't think there's any world where you can allow Mirage to be played right now because every team that's played Na'Vi on Mirage in like the last like 8 games has just gone destroyed. And obviously Mao's like to play Mirage, so you're already having to like give up one leg to Na'Vi in the veto. So I think you have to get weird with it. I think you gotta take like a risk, maybe just like play a map. I think Na'Vi don't play Vertigo that often. Maybe you take like a Vertigo pick. And try and like spook them up a little bit.
Or you can even take it as decider, just be like a Boomich and just walk backwards and be like, yeah, we're gonna fucking take you on Mirage. But I think that's not a good idea,
that sounds great, and like that'd be the great story if they beat him on Mirage, but just based on the stats, that isn't happening. Na'Vi destroy everybody on Mirage. I don't think you can allow it.
Yeah. I think it's like the case where it's like, there's Brave and there's Stupidity.
Yes. And right now I think taking Mirage veers straight into Stupid down.
Yep. Anyways, let's go on to the next topic. We've talked about Cologne. We've talked a lot about the CS, and geez, that was actually really fucking insightful, to be honest. I loved it. We'll go on to the next topic.
I'm having a great time.
Let's talk about your stuff, your line of work, in particular the recaps, because obviously, how do you build, like, the big topic is how do you build highlights and storylines, because highlights are hard to capture because there's like 20 million fucking moments in a game. How do you select the ones that you include in and the ones to just get out? Do you include that random 1v2 clutch where 2 players were on 20 HP and it could be one? Like, how do you select which wins you want to put in?
So I think there's 2 ways you can go about it. I think the easiest way is to you watch the game, you pull up HLTV afterwards, and HLTV has like the highlight rounds usually right before the score, and you can start there and you can say, okay, maybe I'm going to use like 1 or 2 of these. But mostly like what I'm looking for is when I'm watching the game, I'll just kind of like I'll take a mental note, or I'll literally write down like, oh, that was a really interesting round, and I'll want to go back and watch it again and see if there's actually something to look into. But most of the time, in terms of building the storylines, I think it's just something that naturally I'm kind of good at, is like building the narrative. Like I've always been good at talking and kind of building the story of what's going on in these games. And so for me, I'm able to kind of like naturally kind of riff off of what I'm seeing in the game and build the storylines like as I go. But most of the times I'm looking at the score for the players. If there's like a specific player that really stands out, like someone's having a crazy good performance, I want to look at their POV first. But also I'll just look at the timeline of the rounds. And if you've gone on like, a 4 round win streak, that's usually a good place to start. Like, what did you do there to get that economy control? Because if you've won 3 rounds in a row, you've probably broken the other team's economy at least once. So that means you've done something like really strong in that round. So I'll go there first and see if there's something that stands out that maybe I missed when I'm not watching the game like perfectly all the time.
It's like basically like, do you focus on the small intricate things that build up a play? Like, just start from the little rock that fell off and then get to the boulder? Or do you just focus on the boulder?
I think it depends on the round. So like when I was talking about the Saw Inferno game, obviously it was very clear to see that you could make the A to B correlation, that Udrix saves the M4 on round 2, he gets the 4K on round 3. You could just directly talk about how that links one to the other. So I highlight round 3, how they lost it, but Udrix makes the save. And then I'll talk about the next round and show Udrix getting the 4K and like what that means in the context of the rest of the game. And then obviously I'm relying on the fact that overall I don't script my videos, at least not for now. Yeah. And I'm just really good at talking about what happens in the round and like just kind of spinning off of that. So talking about how this could affect FaZe or how it did affect FaZe, or what this means in the greater context of being able to break the economy or establish the map control. Like I've just always kind of been good at like picking out those little things. Like another good example of that was on their T side on Inferno. It was round 18, and FaZe were on like a low buy, and so were Saw. They were both forcing, but FaZe had 5 rifles, but not a whole lot of utility. And you can see in the round that all their utility was going B, because they needed all the Molotovs and nades to contest banana control. But Saw, they played slow through alt mid into apartments and then broke out A. And it was very clear here that if you just look right before they burst out, that Rain and Robs are crossfiring mid, but they have no counter utility.
Yeah.
And because they chose to front end all the utility B, that left a really big hole on A where Saw can just walk out. And if Saw wins this round, then G2 are forced into a save. They have to save the B rifles. They might not even be able to 5 bolt full buy the next round.
Don't worry about that. Right? Like, obviously, by G2 means FaZe. But yeah, you can definitely capture aspects like that. Oh, you know what? Nico was on FaZe on one stage, clearly, right? We can put him back on. Okay, get back in there, Nico.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Nico, I'm just gonna say it now. Kerrigan's your only hope for getting the major. Get the band back together. One last dance. Just pull full Michael Jordan. Come on, one more go around.
He's burnt so many.
You can bring Monsi with you. I'm sure we can sell Brokey somewhere else. But we'll make the FaZe power team again, and that'll be it. Win the major. You'll beat Simple 5 times.
I can hear the Baltic states from here getting angry at suggesting it minus Brokey. Yep.
Double op. We'll have Brokey and Muncie.
I can hear Heku getting angry about. No, Heku wouldn't get angry, but either way. But yeah.
But yeah, obviously, when I'm recording, I do have to re-record often because, again, you watch so many games, the names start to run together.
Oh, definitely.
Like it can be just all the names, all the rounds. It's all a blur.
So basically, you highlight a lot of the tactical stuff in particular, and be like, they can't do any utility or anything like that. Let's say, for example, Rops is at quad, for example. It's just like, yeah, Rops can't contest them walking out on A side, because if he does, he's just going to be traded 1-for-1, and then they're going to have one person in sight as a 4v4, and it's just very difficult to win on A, and they've already got a bomb plant. They're most likely going to have post plants as well, which means they're just harder to just pick out of the site. You got to get that shovel and really dig hard to just get them out. They're just like termites, basically.
Well, yeah, and then I think the important thing is relatability. If I just looked at every round where ZywOo walks down mid and bangs off 5 guys with an AK, everyone knows why ZywOo's good at that. But what does that matter to me? If I'm just the guy watching and I'm trying to learn something, okay, I will just walk down mid to get 5 kills like ZywOo. I'll totally be able to do that. It's like, no, my thumbs are barely functional. I need tactics to survive. And the tactics are what you could take and learn from. So I think it's really important to focus on the meta game itself, because the individual brilliance, everyone can see why that is. It's again, when you contrast it to real sports, everyone can see why LeBron James is so good at basketball when he's, a demigod running down the court and he could just jump 6 feet in the air and rip the hoop off. You can't do that. I can't jump that high. Jesus Christ. But I can watch how LeBron plays the game, his game IQ, and makes his passing decisions. That's something I can learn from, and I could apply when I play basketball and then miss the pass and be terrible.
Yep.
But the tactics are what people can actually relate to.
So that's what you focus on. You don't focus on the individual clutches or highlights. You focus on the tactical and then build it up from there. What are sort of highlights that you want to, say, obviously people who are getting into highlighting and stuff like that, storylines? What do you think the big red flags on certain highlights to avoid?
Or is it's interesting because usually I don't really think about what not to focus on. I have to think about that for a second. I think the big thing is that if you're going to talk about a round, there needs to be a purpose to it. So I will focus on clutches or individual brilliances when it matters to either the bigger story that I'm trying to tell, or because it factors into a later round. So again, in the Saw series, there's no way in hell I wasn't going to talk about that Mutiris clutch. It was fantastic. But if I was just talking about that nuke game and that was the only round I went into, that doesn't really tell a full story, because there were the rounds before it that built up to that point, or there were other tactics that Saw had to run that made that possible. So you have to just take it all in the broader context of the video. And usually it's just kind of to be honest, a lot of it's just making it up as I go. I'll be watching the rounds after the fact to find footage, and I'll find something there that I missed from the tournament, and then it just kind of builds from there. Or sometimes, this happens all the time, I'll record 5, 6, 7 rounds from a map, and then maybe use 2, maybe use 3 in the actual video. But it's important to have that leeway, because one, you're going to need like filler footage when you're not making a specific point. And then two, maybe you want to talk about something and then you start working on it and then the point doesn't work, or maybe you want to put it somewhere else. But you have to be moldable. You can't just like say, okay, ZywOo had 30 kills in Dust 2. I'm going to look for the rounds where he had the 4K, the 3K, and the 2K clutch with the op. It's like, you can kind of do that, but you got to be more flexible.
Yep. I guess I feel like you script as you go along, pretty much, like with what you're doing here. Like as you go on, you script. So I heard when you said you didn't script, and I'm just like, oh, no, I feel like you script as you go along, mate. Like you just do basically.
Yeah, but like I don't like literally. If I wrote down what I was gonna say, I've done that before, and that's how I started. Like I think it's because I did it so much when I worked in Valorant for Skill Cap. They made me script everything because they would take my scripts and use them for captions.
Yep.
So I had to be fully scripted. But I think going along and that process of building scripts for all those videos, I just got to the point where I was just doing it one round at a time, and then I would just go write it down afterwards. So like I was just building the script in my mind as I went. And sometimes I'll go back and re-record take. Like, we talked about where we've highlighted a few times where I've misspoke. There was in today's video, I totally like flipped around the overtime in the Saw FaZe game. I said Saw split their first 2 overtime rounds with FaZe on the CT side, but that was on their T side on the second half of overtime. So when I was editing, I was like, okay, I'm an idiot. I have to go back and re-record that bit, fix that. Luckily, it didn't mess with the flow or anything. I just had to just rearrange the words.
Do you like use AI or anything like that for your transcripting, anything like that, or is it just not that great yet?
Hell no.
Yep.
I am super anti AI. I think it has its purpose in certain things. Like if you were using it, like if you were writing a program, you were like writing like machine language to like make a robot do something, and you used AI to fill in the gaps, then yeah, that makes sense. But I think AI getting anywhere near the creative process, using it to make any kind of art.
Yep.
I'm super against it. I think it's just.
I meant for the transcripting. Okay, I didn't want to use it for like the entire video.
Oh, okay.
I meant for the transcripting. If you use it for that, sorry, I worded that question badly.
Okay, yeah, that's my bad.
No, that's my bad.
I guess I could. I think YouTube's auto captioning already uses AI, and the auto captions are a lot better than they used to be. So I could go in and probably do it, but the YouTube auto captions seem to be perfectly fine. When we were talking about before we started the show about how I was highlighted by that Brazilian YouTube channel, the only way I knew what the hell they were saying was I used the English auto translations on YouTube, and they were really good. So,
yep. Also with like storylines and highlights in particular, like how do you build them? Do you build them on their own? Look at other sources, or what do you do in that area? Or basically, the storyline can change as it goes along round by round.
I think it's good to kind of build like a concise narrative. Like obviously with like I keep going back to Saw because it's the most recent thing in my mind.
Yep.
Saw have just the really great storyline going in. It's this miracle run. It's the furthest a Portuguese team has made it in a tier 1 event.
Definitely.
And then they're doing it in such like a clear way where like you can really define like what Saw is doing for success. So like building into that narrative and really like going deep on like, I built this up as like a David versus Goliath thing. Like, FaZe are the gatekeeper. That's what they've always been. Like, if you can beat FaZe, you can hang. And if you beat FaZe, you are welcome in the club. You're allowed to be here. Yep. So if you overcome FaZe, that's such a big deal for your team's status. So I think some of the narratives are really easy and they're really upfront. Yep. But other times, I think it just kind of comes naturally where it's like, ZywOo has struggled so much with Vitality to win trophies. So like if Vitality, if they win tomorrow, that's a big moment in ZywOo's career, because right now in the context of CS2 with Sybil being gone, ZywOo should be the #1 player in the game. He should be contending to be the current best player, like the future GOAT of CS2. This should be his time with Simple gone, but he hasn't lived up to that number. And every time that ZywOo doesn't quite live up to it, do we start to doubt his ability to be that guy? So I think some narratives, they come easier, but it's very contextual to like whatever series I'm covering. Sometimes, and this is another thing that I had to learn, there are some series that they're just better to just kind of skip through. Like if it's a really boring stop, like when G2 were destroying teams like by 10-round leads, I would just mention it and say, G2 they stomped the Mongols or whatever. Like there's like 5 rounds they won.
Yeah, it's
on to the next topic.
It's like basically they did what they needed to do. That's pretty much the story. Like if G2
there's nothing to go into.
It's like G2 like Nick their win conditions actually worked, and that's what they needed to do. Next series. Yeah.
Perfect example, when they played Astralis, I didn't talk about either of G2's wins in that video because the only game that was interesting and worth going into was Mirage, where Astralis actually fought back and they called really good T-sides to play around G2 and sneak out that win. The other two games, yeah, I mean, they literally got stomped out. I think it was 13-4 and 13-1.
Yep.
There's nothing to delve into. Nico clicked heads.
Yep.
I'll see you guys next time.
Yep.
Like there's not much substance there, because when you're overwhelmingly winning the rounds, like I'm not gonna, for the sake of brevity, for the sake of the video like having flow, I'm just not gonna focus on that, because what is there to talk about?
Yep. So what sort of storylines do you like and highlights do you like the most? Like, you also had the David and Goliath one. Is there any storylines that you like using or utilizing?
I think everyone loves obviously like a good upset, but the problem is that like people will overhype certain upsets when I don't think they're really warranted. So like 9Z, I think we're generating a lot of hype in the beginning stages of Cologne because they were looking so good. Like similar to Saw, like their tactical base was super solid, and then they had individuals who were doing really well. So like I really wanted to build into that narrative, and then obviously they got crushed like right away. And so now you have like this thing that was like they were starting to like peak. Like, could they actually make a threat? And I really thought they could. I had a lot of belief in 9Z to like do something in the main stage of Cologne. And then it's like, okay, well they collapsed. What went wrong, and then also what can we learn? What can the team learn to continue to go forward? So an upset where it's just like one player popping off, I don't think is as interesting, because how repeatable is it? That's like the ultimate problem, right? Ultimate was like the fourth best rated player at Cologne. Is he going to repeat that? Unless he's suddenly, like I said, a top 5 opper, I doubt it. It's really interesting to talk about what Liquid did. Yeah, the honeymoon period. So you have to take that in the broader context, and then also. I'm a sucker for FaZe, and I'm a sucker for complexity, so I'm going to talk about those teams with a lot more interest than other teams, like compared to Virtus Pro. I mean, it's like a running joke now in my videos. If Virtus Pro do bad, I'm going to just like be as brutal as humanly possible, because I don't like the roster.
You're antithesis to me, because anytime VP does good, I like talking about them.
Well, that's the thing. I made this very clear. I want them to do good, because when they did good, they had a couple good series back in Dallas, and I was like, they could be a top 5 team. When Jame was popping off, and then Electronic was doing good, and he was like this aggressive X Factor element. You saw the vision. Yeah. Like suddenly the Flit Fame Electronic combo. That's like, dude, you have so much rifling power on this team, and then they just continued to disappoint. Yeah. It got to the point where I would make one recap where it's like, dude, Virtus Pro are on the verge of breaking out, and then the next video, Virtus Pro shit the bed. And I'm like, why did I even bet on Virtus Pro in the first place? You guys continue to betray me. So now it's like, I won't even bet on Virtus Pro. Like, I don't trust them to win any game.
Yep. What do you think about talk about complexity before we move on to the next topic, okay? What do you think about complexity picking up a Liege in that Rostermania two years ago? I put this down as the move of that entire Rostermania.
Yeah, for complexity, I mean, the value's been insane, right? Complexity, they went to the finals at Sydney. They've been a threat in a couple other tournaments. If nothing else, their stock as a team has risen. They've been in the top 10 for like the entirety of this year. And I think it's pretty clear that like they are a second star away from being a totally legit like top 7 or better team. Because I think if you were to replace probably Grim, because I don't think you can find another opper that's going to match Halzerk at this point. Like if you took like a Hexed from NRG maybe, or another one of those like really good tier 2 NA riflers that are starting to come up. The couple names are escaping me.
Just take
but
Lake,
someone
okay?
that
Let's
was
just pick Lake and put him in.
Yeah, so let's assume they could get Lake.
Yeah.
Wait, Lake's an opper, isn't he?
No, Lake's a rifler. He plays at M80.
I swear, I must be thinking of somebody else.
You must be thinking of Slacks. You must be getting confused with Slacks.
I'll have to refresh myself. I thought Lake was an opper. Maybe I'm just totally mixing names.
You could be getting confused with Slump. Is Slump an opper? Because he's one that's been talked about as well. Don't worry. I messed up as well. I called Keen. I thought Shady was the AWPer, not Keen, on Semper Fi. Like, I really forgot that Keen was an AWPer.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know why I thought Lake was an AWPer. Just shows you how much I've watched M80 lately. Yep. I can't cover everything, unfortunately. But anyway, so yeah, let's just swap in Lake. Yep. And then Halzerk gets like a little bit more consistent. I think his attitude right now is kind of a problem. I think people are underrating JT. JT is like a very good in-game leader. Like, you don't need a new in-game leader for this team.
I was about to say the same thing. JT is heavily underrated, not only just because IGL, but he's able to trade out and stop star players from being star players. Like, you know,
dude, he's good for like a 1 or 2 insane clutches like every tournament.
He's like that fire blanket. Like, you know, when like Nico gets a kill and he's could get for another, JT's like fire blanket. Not Nico, fuck off, you're gone.
Yeah. So I think that Complexity are one of those teams, a lot like Virtus Pro, where they're really close to breaking through. I give Cole a lot more benefit of the doubt because I like them better and I'm a huge Liege fan.
Yep.
So I do think they need to make a change. I don't think this roster is it, but they're really close, and it's the best. What I mean, they're the best like NA, like true NA roster we've had in forever.
Yeah, that's why I said it was the best move that they did picking up a Liege, because they got rid of Fang, they picked up a Liege, and Complexity have gone from like being a top 20 team to like top 10 and can get in there as well. Obviously, there are a few pieces
I think
away.
I rated them number 9.
As a few pieces away from being a top team, but that move was generational, because that's gonna, like, not only does it start them on their journey, you could launch them into that top 5 tier territory as well. And this was when everyone was going on about the Astralis moves and the Furia moves. And I'm like, Fallen to Fury is terrible. And it's turned out to be not very good. But I was like,
I think it's cool.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I was thinking, a Liege is the move. Like, a Liege is so underrated, that move, on how good it's going to make Complexity.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool storyline, too, because Liege would have been well within his rights to go to a top European team and get the bag and be just for sure in contention to win trophies, like 100%. I'm sure there were offers on the table to go to every top team in the world back when he was available for free agency. There's no doubt. Even though he was like kind of on a downturn towards the end of Liquid and he wasn't playing as well, everyone knows who Liege is. I mean, he's arguably the best NA player in the history of CSGO. And now in CS2, I mean, dude, for my money, he's easily a top 3 rifler this year. And he's been number 1 at some point, especially when Nico wasn't doing so well. And the cool thing to me about Liege, and this was a video that I started working on and unfortunately just hit the cutting room table and never got finished, is that Liege and Donk are doing 2 things that I think are really, really exciting. And that's that they've redefined what an aggressive like entry player can be, because I feel like throughout the entirety that I've watched Counter-Strike, going back to like 2013, because I'm new to CS in the sense that like I didn't know anything about Source or 1.6, but I watched pretty much the entirety of CSGO, and for however many years the entry was considered a support role. Like Apex is the best entry of all time, but Apex was always, you would expect Apex to go in, he'd get the first kill like no matter what because he was insane, but then he would die right after, and then right behind the rest of the French would swarm in, and suddenly Dust 2 was lost. And entry was always put into that support role. But I think Donk and Liege have found this new niche where they are star players who are dedicated entries, and they are multi-killing at a rate that just seems so unreal. Like, it seems just dumb. Like, it used to be like the classic, like when Simple was hard carrying Navi, be like, okay, Simple, go here and open up the bomb site, and Simple would go get 3 kills, and we'd be like, but this isn't like good or healthy for the team. But when you build around that, and suddenly you can make it like a defined play that a Liege is going to burst out elbow on Ancient and just get 3 kills in mid like every time. It's such a cool weapon, and it changes everything about how the CTs have to deal with you, and you're taking space like in a way that like just hasn't been done before. And I think that's only possible because CS2 at first mechanically was so different that rushing was a lot more advantageous. And now I think we're at the point where they fixed a lot of those netcode issues and the game is more similar to Go, but people learned how to play that way and it's stuck.
Also going to say as well with the Leash is not just the fact he can entry very well, but his analytics for the game. Because I remember he sent a tweet to Koshimo about discussing Davenport University's game plan. And he was talking about, don't be predictable, don't telegraph your executes, sometimes you might want to take a contact play, make sure your play has some purpose, all the stuff you've been saying all podcast. And he just sent that giant detail. I still got that tweet, I'm trying to find it somewhere, I can send it to you guys after, but it's a tweet detailing what Davenport University can do in certain rounds and whatnot, and what was good and what was bad. And can you imagine how much work he puts in his entry work if he's detailed with that analytics on that end? That's why he's probably
I think 100%.
Yeah,
I think him and Twists are one of the like few examples of NA players who kind of transcend. Like they play the North American style. They play very free, very loose, and very aggressive. But they're 2 of the best like IQs for the game we have ever seen. Like the way they both look at the game from an individual perspective is like unheard of. There's only a handful of other really great players who think about the game in the same way. You think of like a Nico, a Simple, a Zaiwu, like all these players, like they're like supercomputers with how they analyze the information and make their own space. Doesn't always translate to be an IGL twist. Let's slow down our roll a little bit. But the way that they think about the game is just different. Like you could try and play like a Liege, it's not going to work because not only is he one of the best mechanical players in the world, but his ability to just absorb information is second to none. You know, it's like LeBron James. LeBron James is the best combination of athlete and intellect. the NBA has ever seen. His game IQ is just so much higher, and then he's front flipping over you and ripping the rim off.
Yep. We should get to the next topic because we're definitely getting very off topic on the original one with how to build highlights and whatnot, and how to recognize players. But
it all matters.
It all matters at the end of the day, like all the information that we're pouring out. And this brings us to our next topic. How do you stand out in the saturated market? And I think we've sort of answered that. It's just being able to pick out the minor details and the underrated players, as you mentioned with JT, because I was going to mention JT as well, because JT is really underrated on complexity. But how do you stand out in a highlight and recap market where literally anyone can do it? It's like similar to casting as well. Anyone could do it. How do you make sure you stand out?
I think, but just like casting though, there's a very clear difference between the people who like have the quality behind it, because I think that there's a saturation of people who just post game highlights, because you get the game highlights from the tournament organizer, and then there's a couple dedicated channels that'll post highlights and frag movies.
That's exactly what I'm talking
once again,
about.
Yeah, but once again, like originally what I said, there were two types of analytical content in CS. There was demo review, and then there were podcasts. And podcasts are great, and they're wonderful. I listen to a lot of them still. And then the demo review is also really good and really intense and really well informed. But the one thing I get this comment literally like every recap is like, oh hey, I couldn't catch all the games today. This is how I get up to date with all the scores, because no one wants to go and read HLTV. As you know, like we all want to actually like have the content in a way that's entertaining, and we don't want to just read score sheets. So to me, I saw that, and because like the Sports Center stuff from my childhood mattered so much to me and how I fell in love with sports there, I was like, there's no one who's doing Sports Center for Counter-Strike. That was a totally open niche. Unless there's someone else that I'm missing, I have not seen anyone else who does something like what I do.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much. That's why I got you on in particular, because I'm like, this is an interesting little topic that I have no fucking idea about, but I want to learn more about it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
because usually it's condensed into the tournament itself. Like you'll get the post-match analysis, and then they'll talk about all the games at the end of the day. But one of the things that I've watched by the numbers and all these other podcasts over the years, we all know that the analysis segments just aren't viewed as much. You get like 80K or whatever like on the YouTube stream for the game, and then as soon as the analysis segment comes on, it drops off by like more than half.
Yeah, everyone's already at
people aren't seeing that content.
Everyone's already in a cafe, you know, you're ordering a hot dog or a chicken roll, whatever it is. Like nobody really cares about the desk content.
Yeah, that's why in sports broadcasting it's been an issue too. That's why stuff like Inside the NBA is less about the basketball content and more about the comedy and the personalities they bring on. That's why they have Shaq and Charles Barkley on. Not because Shaq and Charles Barkley are really good at giving you like analytical basketball content, because they're really fucking funny. Yeah, and that's why that works. And then all the skits DSL do are really entertaining, and their desk segments are amazing, but not many people tune into them. But there are plenty of people who are going to come home, the tournament's already over for the day, they don't want to go and watch the whole tournament. Maybe they'll watch the highlights, but if someone's taking those highlights and is giving you like the quick, this like 5 minutes, sometimes maybe I'll do like 10 minutes for a single series if it's really in depth, and then they know what to know for the next day.
Every time, you know, you mentioned about the guys who are funny as hell, I remember it, for some reason I call him J.R. Smith, but that's a basketball player. It's the guy who rails on the Cowboys nonstop. He's my favorite guy. He stirs up the Cowboys.
Pat McAfee.
No, not McAfee, not him. They're one on ESPN that just, you know, always just rails on the Cowboys when they lose.
I feel like everyone's just on the Cowboys, so that's like, we're not getting more specific.
I know, true, but he's like, you know, he's the one that, like, you know, they made a massive mistake, you know.
But also, like, I think an important part is...
That's right. How about them Cowboys? That's his phrase. That's right.
God, I could have told you the name.
I can't remember his name, but he's one of my favorites because he's just so funny. You know, just watch his segments when the Cowboys lose, because I'm like, how about them Cowboys?
But I do think there's another aspect that like I want to straddle the line too, because I think Stephen A. Smith is like the perfect example. But Stephen A. Smith is a very good journalist. He's been a journalist forever, and he writes really good in-depth articles, and he'll write really interesting think pieces. But then he goes on TV, he puts on the persona, and he starts yelling at Skip Bayless, and everyone's super entertained by that. So I do straight the line where I will include comedic bits in my video, and like I'll try and make things funny where it's appropriate. Or like when I'm yelling at VP, I'll really take it up and I'll be like screaming at Verse Pro to like sell Jam, or you know, I'll call Fallen old and decrepit and they need to get rid of him. Like it's important to have personality, because it's so easy to just like be robotic and just go over the scores. But I want people to watch, not just because they want the information, but because they enjoy my presentation of it. And that comes with whatever good and bad there is in my personality. And, you know, I'm a snarky asshole by nature, so I have to include that snark in my video somewhere for it to be like my content.
Do you like, you know, kind of like, you kind of had to like put some personality into it, as you said. Like, do you have like any like mentors or like inspirations of where you've taken it from? Like, you know, you got urinating tree for the NFL, for example, and everyone fucking loves his videos because, you know, builds in that persona. Do you have like any like inspirations from different content creators that you've taken things from in putting it to CS?
I think the easiest two people to that 100% affect how I go about this is that I've watched Thorin and Richard for, you know, the past decade, never back down from saying whatever's on their mind, good or ill, even if Thorin sometimes says the most ridiculous things.
I know.
But the important part is they stand on it. They stand on it 100%. Even if they're wrong, they're going to double down, and they're not afraid, because I think it's so easy to just try and like play to the crowd. But like, I want people to disagree with me. I want people to argue with me. I want people to like say I'm wrong and give me their side. So like when I'm getting really mad at teams, or like I'm pointing out that like I don't like what Fallen's doing in the Brazilian team, I know that there's a very rabid section of the Brazilian fan base who might get mad at that. But like, I want them to respond. I want them to work. I want that dialogue to be there. And then most importantly, it wouldn't feel like me if I just kind of like bowed down and like, you know, and you know, just kissed the ring. Another good example of that is I and a lot of other people didn't cover the Esports World Cup, because there's part of me that's like, I could have just taken the money that I would have gotten. It would have done well on my channel. I would have gotten all those views, and it was just coming out of the player break. So there was a lack of content, but morally I couldn't stand by it. And you know, it's so easy to just say, you know, the check comes in. And when you're not making any money, that's even harder to say no to anything that's potential, right? But I would have had to just sit with it and realize that, like I chose to let go of something I believe in for the sake of views. And I don't want to do that.
I gotta say, overall, like, you know, if you're gonna protest something, especially on your principles, there is a sacrifice to it. You have to sacrifice for it. And obviously you understand it very well. Like, you know, well, if I don't like what Esports World Cup is, I cover it, I lose my check. That's the consequence. I understand that. I don't like people who try to be like, oh, but I need it for my mortgage. It's like, no, if you protest on your principles, you have to have some sacrifice. You can't support principles just because it's convenient to you.
Yeah, and if you're going to take the check, you just have to be honest about it. Like, don't try and play both sides, like you're saying. Like, if I'm gonna, like, and then the other thing that I have to start thinking about is if I was going to take sponsors. Like right now, I'm sponsored by Advanced.gg, who's another one of the many energy drink supplement companies in the space. And compared to other companies, Advanced is someone, they were endemic to Destiny. They work with a lot of Destiny creators, so I've known about them for a long time. And then when I look at what they're doing compared to other companies, I chose to reach out to them first over other companies because I was more agreeable with what they were putting out in terms of their stances, what they were putting out as a product. And I wouldn't want to just like shill something to my viewers. So like if it was like a gambling company or a skins gambling site came to me, I don't think I would take that. If it was like, you know, a site like Skins Monkey, which is just like a trading site, that to me seems fine, because it's just moving skins from one place to another. But you know, we're talking like a casino or betting on games. I think personally I wouldn't take it, because while I have no problem with gambling or betting on sports, I don't think there's enough regulation. I don't think there's enough what's the word? I don't think there's enough consequences to people doing it in the space right now, especially when it comes to catering to younger audiences or, you know, catering to people who have gambling issues at all.
100%
like my huge issue with American sports as a whole. Yeah, like my huge issue with American sports as a whole right now is we're seeing this happen in real time, where the NBA 5 years ago, you would never see like the betting odds, the over under or whatever. But now all they are always talking about the over under and the wager during the game. They talk about during halftime. It's on the court. If you're a gambling addict, how do you even watch sports anymore?
Yeah, exactly.
So like I just, for me, there has to be a limit.
So KYC, sorry, it's a dealing in my fucking industry as financial advisor. It's know your client. Basically, you have to identify your client.
Know your client. 100%.
And like with crypto casinos and stuff like that as well, they don't. Like, they have limited KYC or don't do it at all. Or the one for the younger generation is they say, oh, know your client's important if we're losing money, you know?
Yeah, I think it's like, and it would be tough, right? Because those types of companies, they throw around big money. And right now, I'm just fiending for a Twitch payout or a YouTube payout every month. So if someone came to me and was like, hey, we'll sponsor you, here's $5,000 a month. I would have to look at that. That for me is an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
Like that would change so much about my current situation in the blink of an eye. And if it was from a source I couldn't agree with, I would have to say no to it, because I can't personally compromise myself like that.
Yeah.
Like you only get one chance to stand on your morals. And once it's gone, you can't gain that credibility back. And it's like, you have to make that choice, man. The money matters, but also who you are as a person and what you stand for matters so much more.
Yep, definitely. I can definitely agree with that. Like, that's been my biggest test with ESL in particular. I haven't railed too hard on, stuff like you have with Esports World Cup. I covered it as part of my recap. Like, obviously I had to cover it for AU Esports. But yeah, like, I did not like the format. I was openly critical of a lot of their shit that they did. Like, BO freeze and then BO1 eliminations. That was crap. That was bullshit. That's like a horrible tournament format and should never have been done. Zhizha Hao getting forced into the lower bracket for just drawing a short score. They couldn't do anything about it. That's bullshit. And I thought it was like really horribly done with the broadcasting as well. I criticized the broadcasting where they casted Rare Atom v Mongos over fucking Tyloo v Lin Vision. And it's just like, the fuck are you doing? And also didn't have a second stream for like close qualities as well. So like if you didn't have the other game wasn't broadcasted by anyone. I had the Huya and Duo guys, which is the Chinese streamers. They couldn't get Lin Vision or Tyloo IPs.
Yeah. I mean the whole thing is just like it's clear that they're just throwing money to try and
exactly.
gain legitimacy. And I think another thing, and this is actually a discussion I had with my mom, because I was talking to her about it, because I wasn't sure at the time still if I should just bite the bullet and at least just like talk about the results after the tournament or like make reference to it in some way. And when I talked about it with my mom, obviously the big thing that came up to me was, well, okay, ESL are obviously owned by the Savvy Games Group. They're the same company that sponsors and runs the EWC. So how much degree of separation is there from covering an ESL tournament versus the EWC? And that's a real discussion. That's a real interesting, like, nuanced point. What ended up being for me at the end of the day is that I can't control the fact that ESL dominates the space and that they're the majority of the calendar. But when it came to the EWC specifically, the fact that it was organized directly by the government and the government had direct input on the tournament, there's no more degree of separation. At least like when ESL runs a tournament in Cologne, ESL is just taking a check. It's definitely affecting how they run and what they talk about, obviously, but there's still enough degree of separation that like it's close enough. Yeah. Like it doesn't feel great, and I wish that they were a better representative for the space, but I can't control what they do when we're talking about billion-dollar companies. Like there's only so much. I have my morals. I made that choice, and I had to just live with the consequences of that choice.
Yeah, so same with me as a caster. Like I felt a bit uncomfortable when that was announced, because obviously I get paid by ESL to cast certain games, so like close qualifiers for AU and Asia. I get paid by ESL to cast that, so when it's on their channel. Obviously, when I cast ESA Prem and stuff like that, I'm not paid at all. That's me just doing community stuff, which I do a lot of in particular. And it's just very, very difficult. And I do agree in a way there's degrees of separation, but I still do feel uncomfortable about it at times as well. And I think one thing in particular, like that I've picked out from this as well with the standout, is how you treat like events that go against your principles and go against your core as a person. Like if you are covering it, it's clearly just looking a bit greedy. Like that's the optics it gives out. But that's how you can stand out when you don't take it, and you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to take that. I think that tournament's bullshit, and I think it's a bunch of greenwashing, not greenwashing, sports washing. Got my terms mixed up, okay? But yeah, I think that's the point of it all. Basically, it's just like, I don't agree with this. I think this is bad format. Not going to cover it. I think it's the way you can stand out.
Yeah, and I think I think that goes to it. I think a big thing about standing out is being willing to be, an actual personality. Like how many YouTube channels exist that they're just basically like they're faceless. They are like a company, and then they have a bunch of voices behind them that do all their content, or they're like someone who they do content, but you don't really know much about the person involved. I think a big part about standing out is making sure that like your personality is front and center. Like when people watch my videos, they see directly me. They interact with my sense, my take on the game. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I make a take that's like just totally wrong, or like I call wrong on a team, or like maybe like
I make a. That's what I'm gonna say. You don't want to read my articles with me ripping on G2 when they won IEM Dallas.
I'm willing to be wrong. I don't mind that. Like I went out and like one of the first times VP betrayed me. I was like, why is Norbert on this team? I didn't rate Norbert at all.
Oh no,
Because
that's
the last like 2 tournaments he'd been awful, but obviously he is a good player.
Yep.
But just like in that moment, that's what I was feeling. I wasn't afraid to like put that out there and be wrong. And then also going off of that, it's important to just do a ton of research. So like I listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to other creators talk about the scene, and it's important to like have that like wide net, because there's a lot of stuff that like wouldn't otherwise be on my radar.
Have you ever
like
thought about,
it's important.
Have you ever thought about bringing players on or collabing with other players? Like, just hopefully talk to the agents and then get them on to go through a round with you or anything like that?
Oh yeah, dude, come on, that'd be sick. What was cool was very early on I got to work with the Refrag guys, and I've talked with Mike several times. And obviously Elige co-owns Refrag. Did you tell me if one day Mike was like, hey, do you want to work with Elige on a Refrag video? I'd be like, yes, please.
Yeah, that would be
I'll do that in a heartbeat. But yeah, no, I think that's definitely something that will come with time. I think there's definitely, I know that like obviously I'm not gonna be one of those guys who just gets to like play FPL with a bunch of the pro players or like other like top NA players in the scene. I'm not good enough to play. I'm not facing level 10.
All I'm gonna say though, if you try to do that, you're gonna be like Loba and hate CS2. Is that what you're trying to say here?
No. I think I'm gonna do exactly the opposite of Loba to establish myself in the scene. I have to honor my teacher Richard Lewis, and I cannot go down the path of Loba. I think I would be doing him a disservice.
That because as soon as you mentioned FPL, I'm like, this is Loba territory, isn't it?
No, but like I know. Here's the thing, right? If I was good enough to play at that level, I would have pursued being a pro player. I understand that like I'm good as a casual player, but I'm not those guys. I'm not like Austin. Like Austin is obviously someone who grinded up and can play at that like FPL level, and now he's playing with Flom and Mythic, and he's probably good enough to like play casual scrims with all the good NA pros. Like I know that's not my niche, so it's not a niche I try to operate in. I stream myself playing CS2 all the time, knowing that people are gonna walk in and watch me whiff all my shots. Like I understand that, and like I've gotten a lot better as I've started playing CS2 again. But like I also know that like I'm very much a casual player of the game, and my focus is watching the games and trying to extract that information, that value from the pro scene that other people may not see. So I think it's important just to make sure like you know a lane you're going down. But I mean, I'd love to work with other players. It'd be sick.
Exactly. It's one part to stand out, but I think you've got to completely like what you're not, but you got to stand out in the areas that you are. And also going to say for Austin, particularly to add to Austin's little credibility, Austin was always that first person to put his hand up if a team needed a sub. Like he would always sub in right away. Unless I'm getting the Austins confused, but I'm very sure that was the Austin that like if the team needed a sub, he's like, here, going, no, sub me and I'll play for you guys.
Austin CS, the guy who does all the nade lineups.
Yeah. Like I'm very sure, unless I'm getting the Austins confused, because there's one.
Just got signed to play with Mythic and Vlom.
I'm trying to think if they're the same, because there's another Austin person as well that would always like sub in for people and stuff like that. Maybe I've got the wrong person in particular, but we'll see. But like I know a player called Austin in particular that always would sub in for various teams and stuff like that as well. We could probably confirm that later. But I think I've got the same guy. I think he's the guy that like if a team needed a sub like emergency wise, first person up, hands up, it would be in there.
I got another thing that I've been really focused on is that one thing that bugs me, it rubs me the wrong way, is there is this content mill around just hating on the game for like the dumbest reasons. Like it feels like you go on Twitter like every day and you're gonna see someone complain about no operation or no update today, or Valve billion-dollar company, why won't they fix the game? And it's like, guys, compared to the first year of CSGO, the game has improved leaps and bounds. Like I feel like it's because everyone has like the shortest memory now. But as someone who was just there as soon as the beta launched and everyone could play, I was playing CS2 every day. And when CS2 started, it was shit. Like the hit reg was awful, the movement was awful, the clipping on the teammates was awful. It ran even worse than it does now, and it doesn't run good now, but at least it runs better. And like compared to then to now, it's like, dude, we're already like so close to at least like game feel to what CSGO was. And in fact, I think everyone's really freaking out about Snap Tap. I'm calling it out. I feel like Snap Tap is like the biggest placebo. I feel like people are assuming that the benefit is so much greater than what it is. Because even me, I am not good, but I still average like an 86% success rate on my counter strafing.
Yep.
I think people were manufacturing their like counter strafe failures as like this much bigger thing when it's clear that like one of the changes from CS2 from Go to CS2 was that accuracy just resets a little slower when you're moving.
Yep.
So things are just a little less accurate. And people are jumping up to snap tap as like this panacea, as like, oh, that's suddenly going to make me so much better. But like, if you're a pro player, maybe that like 2% matters.
Yeah.
But for everybody else, there's no way this actually matters.
I just feel with snap tap in particular, like I think it can actually matter over time. It's like one of those things that build up. It's because I've seen a lot of it happen. Because I play WoW, and the add-ons and how that arms race has built up is just gone to the point where Blizzard have to design private auroras and stuff like that to hide mechanics because the add-ons just literally play the games for them. The reason why I stood against it in particular, and I really hyped up that could be like a game changer, is that you're automating a lot of mechanics in the game, and it's going to get to a point where it's just more automation than a human element, and that's what I get worried about it particularly. That's why I stand against it.
I should say that I'm still 100% thinking the Valve should just you shouldn't be able to use it.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like you're saying, slippery slope. As soon as you allow us one mechanical advantage, like another whole can of worms we're going to have to unpack is that the next generation of monitors are going to come out with built-in AI technology, and they'll show you how to see players through fucking smoke and shit. Like we were at the precipice of just people buying monitors with built-in wall hacks, and then we have keyboards that are going to help you strafe better or whatever. Like we need to just right now. It's like every time there's an innovation in the space like this, it's like golf when they invented the metal golf club versus the wood golf club. We have to define what the restrictions are of what's allowed right now while we're in the arms race, not like 2 years from now after everyone's had to deal with it. And that matters a lot to me too, because again, coming from the Destiny community, the biggest problem in Destiny and like other console shooters right now are Zims, like people using Zim as a plug-in to their Xbox or their PC to like automate aim assist, like delete recoil and all this shit. And then Zims are sold as a product for to help players who are disabled. So they're built as like a help tool. But in reality, it's like, it can help people if you're disabled, but also, hey, you can just toggle the switch and turn off your recoil.
It's like Fortnite with accessibility as well, where they have got the hearing stuff for people who are deaf, but people use it now because they can see it clearly on like their magnifying the movement. And also, not to mention as well, this shit isn't new. Like with what's happening with FPS.
No.
MMO community had it with WoW. Speedrunning it had it with tool-assisted speedruns, where like you could just...
the tales all the time. People will try and find any advantage. If anything is competitive, and then especially when you get to the pro level and there's money on the line, people will do everything within and without the rules to gain that little bit. Because for me and you, 1% doesn't matter. But when you're the best player in the world playing the second best player in the world, 2% is the difference between you winning $100,000 and winning 25.
Also, I was going to say, like, this actually really blends into being standout and whatnot as well. So you were talking about hating CS2 in particular. Like, you need to really, to stand out, you need to really look at what to stand out on in the long term. Because, like, hating CS2, you just have to make shit up as you go along towards the end when CS2 gets better. Because you can tell, like, Loba at the start has some good points. And then you got to the end of it, it's just like, mate, you're just making shit for the sake of it. Like, the entire fucking...
You just hating on the dumbest shit.
Like, the entire debacle about the fucking operations, where they said, an operation could come out in 3 months because anniversary's coming up. And
people manufactured that there was an operation 100% coming out. And then when they got disappointed, when their own expectations they created were not met. It's like, and even... I bought into that a little bit too, where I was talking about these updates. I was like, if you asked me, I thought it was pretty likely we would get an operation before the Shanghai Major. I thought that made the most sense. I don't think it's going to happen, but if Valve were going to drop one, it feels like the right time to do it. But I mean, it doesn't mean like I'm waiting every update. Where's the operation, Valve? Valve, why are you doing this to me, Valve? But it's like there's actual things to be mad about with the game. Like I think Elige 100% nail on the head. If the next like 3 major updates are not focused on fixing the optimization of the game, what the fuck are we doing? I'm going out on Nuke A site and there's a smoke and squeaking. If I look at the smoke, I drop from 160 frames down to 40, and now I'm getting fucked because of it. And someone throws a Molotov into a puddle of water, and suddenly all my frames are gone. And we're still having that issue. We need the game. The biggest valid criticism is that the jump from CS2 to CS2 has killed the performance on mid-level PCs. And we can't have that. They have to be focused on the automation as like the biggest thing going forward.
So I do remember, I think I think it's Path of Exile was heavily criticized for their lack of optimization on their game, and they've made leaps and bounds on it now since a lot of other ARPGs have come out. But yeah, optimization should be the first part. Every fucking person who complains about operations, like, bro, your shit doesn't matter, okay? If the gameplay is not good, you don't get any skins. No one's buying skins. No one can see them on the pro level. But it's just so frustrating. Like, is hating on a game or being negativity a pathway to standing out in a saturated market, or is it just into the
100%. I think absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is, if you have a positive opinion, you'll get people to agree with you. But if you want to generate discourse, you want to have the negative opinion. It's artificial. It's not going to last. But if you want to make a standout, yeah, you want to be inflammatory. That's the same thing in politics, in life, in whatever. If you're the guy who's telling the other guy to go fuck himself, that's going to generate more conversation than if you shake his hand and try and make peace. Like people want conflict on like a visceral level because we're all lizard people at the end of the day, and we crave being able to like throw shit at each other. So like if having the negative opinion is really good for Twitter likes, but it's also makes you look like a miserable fucking person. Like especially when it's not valid, and it's just like when there's valid criticisms, that's like the perfect time to be negative. But then you're just like yelling at Valve, like, and you're making the same like 5 Reddit critiques, like, oh, $1 billion company. Where's my new ancient, a small indie company? It's like you're just regurgitating at a certain point, and you're just parroting, and just no one cares. Like I think Elise is so on point too. Going back to the performance thing, like it feels like 3 months ago the game was running a lot better. Like we started off the game was running really badly, and then like we got better for a little bit, and then like the last like 3 major updates, the performance has like steadily gone downhill. And now it's like feels really bad, especially on certain maps. It's like, yeah, that's the thing you want to be mad about, because that affects everybody. Like operations come and go, but like being able to enjoy the game without some weird frame drop or dropping just stuttering around, like that's what's most important. And then also like the ping, like it's true. Regardless of the fact that hit rate feels better now, it only feels good on like 30 ping. If you're playing 60 ping feels like 100 ping in CSGO.
Oh jeez.
Like it's probably not something you deal too much with because you mainly play like within Australia. I don't assume you like go out to many other servers, but
ANZ has a ping issue as well. Like I get 60 ms to East Coast. Like most of the servers are in Sydney and Melbourne, so if you play from NZ or WA, it probably feels a lot worse. It's
really weird. So like in North America, you play Face It. There's really only East Coast and Midwest servers. There's like no West Coast, like California servers. So like when I play Face It, I have to play in Chicago, and I play in Chicago with 70 ping, and like you die around corners by like a country mile, and the hit rate feels really weird. And then it just makes you want to just focus on playing Premiere, because I play Premiere with just my friends, and we get 30 ping, and the game feels great. So like it sucks. The networking long term definitely needs to be tweaked. But those aren't like the sexy things to complain about. It's like, you know, where is whatever the
Operation
battle royale mode? I forget. Operation mode. Where Danger Zone? Yeah, where's Danger Zone? Bring back Surf. Like all these things that like they're great and they need to come back, but like it's like low priority, man.
Yeah, I always like, you know, I never like hate as a standout, because using hate as a standout, we're gonna get collabs from the future. Like a lot of people just see you as a miserable person. Like I guess if Foreigner was doing these fucking takes and he wasn't popular, no one would fucking hang out with him.
Dude, here's a great example. So what we had that update last week, where they tried to change boosting, and there was that bug for literally 2 hours where you could boost in the air and be floating, and everyone on Twitter was like, wow, Valve, great update, this is broken, the game is ruined, what the fuck are you doing? And then nobody who tweeted out about the bug tweeted out that it was fixed in 2 hours. It was gone. You at best played 1.5 games in Premiere with this bug before it was fixed. But the only post you'd see on Twitter was about how it's broken for like the next 3 days. Like, game-breaking bug. It's like, dude, the fuck are we doing? Can you at least follow up and clarify that this is no longer an issue?
Yeah. I gotta say, you know, wouldn't be surprised if Jojo, you know, Josiah from Mythic was the one to discover it, given the fact he was breaking Mirage in like so many different ways during the beta.
Yeah, I don't remember who I saw it from first, but like I was going to cover the update, and then I was busy that afternoon, and I saw it was a small update, so I just looked away and didn't cover it. And then I saw the bug. I was like, oh shit, maybe I do need to make a video. Went to go sit down, my computer was already fixed, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna go back to what I was doing. There's no need for me to step in now. It's just not worth the effort, man. It's so easy to be mad about things, but also it's way harder to give genuine critique and I don't think anyone gives genuine critique. Like very few people. Like I think War Owl is really good about it. Richard Lewis is really good about it. Yeah, maybe I don't watch much of him, but I would assume Vu is probably pretty good about it too, and Austin is as well. But like, you know, I loved watching Anomaly when I was younger, but now Anomaly, like you look at his Twitter and it's just complaining about the game, and it's just like nothing.
Yeah, I think
he's one of the biggest voices in the scene. Same thing with like Onipixel. I feel like Onipixel his content is very shallow.
I think it's more like, you know, with what you're saying with saturation, is that how you stand out is just, it's just more of a tempered approach, like, you know, being negative but not too negative, being positive but not overtly positive. It's trying to strike that balance, and also not sound like you're like agreeing with the crowd as well.
Well, I think you can agree with the crowd. Like adding to a consensus isn't a problem. Like if we all identify a problem, amplifying it is like the correct thing to do. Like there was that other bug that was around for like 2 weeks, the one where you could plant anywhere on T and like look through walls. Like that was the time for everyone to be like, hey, we got to do something about this. This is pretty bad. And like it went unpatched for like 2-3 weeks. So like there's a time and a place to be agreeing, and having a common opinion isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just about the presentation.
No, what I meant is like, you know, commonly agreeing with the crowd always, not, you know, having your own sort of views.
Yeah, that's fair. You got to augment it with your own take.
Anyways, I think we've had enough for today with the interview. I think we definitely learned a lot. And I've got to say,
we went deep to 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes.
Thanks for coming on as well. Really appreciate it as well. Definitely got a lot of insight on like how to build highlights and stuff like that as well. I really enjoyed talking with you. It's been a good time. And also IEM Cologne, also discussing a lot of players in particular. Definitely can see you coming back on later. We can talk about a lot of other stuff in particular, like roster mania and stuff like that, potentially as well. Any words you want to say? One thing I am good at, anything you want to say to your fans, obviously in chat and everything like that, before we cut it off for now?
Well, you know, if anyone's hanging out in my or in your chat and they aren't subscribed to either of us, you know, check us out. Obviously, I do the tournament recaps. I do a bunch of like general Counter-Strike content as well. And obviously, you know, you're doing a whole bunch of casting and stuff in the interview space. And people need to. The one thing when I made my call to action in today's video, and I was telling people about the interview. The one thing I wanted to highlight was, you know, the tier 2 and the tier 3 scene is so much more important than people give credit to, because if people aren't out there doing freelance casting, covering all of these games that would otherwise just kind of like operate in the void, how is like the next generation of talent going to get discovered? So like what you do is like super important, I think. Not like, you know, trying to be like not like being overly positive, but like it is super important. Like if I was good enough to do it, like I'm good at talking about the game, but I don't really like casting is a different skill.
Yeah, I say overall it's like really important. I've always talked about this to casters in particular, and other casters who do as a paid gig. Like community casting and casting at a lower tier is actually very important. And I've discussed it with a few people as well. Like a lot of people want, you know, money before they cast it. And I'm like, no, bro, you're growing your sort of income by doing this sort of casting. You don't get to a point where you can ask for a check to cast a game. And I think it's very important to cast the grassroots and feed it every now and then. Because, like, basically, if you don't have the grassroots, the tier performances, like the tier 1 stages and stuff like that, don't happen. Like, if you don't have a dedicated crowd who are getting given opportunities at times in particular, they're just not going to stick around. And it's always been an issue with AU space where we, you know, not having people around to castle games, where some games don't get covered because the priority as well. And I explain this criticism quite a bit. I'm not that great explaining it in particular, and I don't like conflict. But I'm just saying, if we don't have games covered, and I'm forced to cover, you know, Order, Chiefs, FlyQuest and stuff like that, because if I don't cover them, then they won't invest into the region, and they are very important. And I had this issue as well when I discussed it with people. I'm just like, I'd love to cast, you know, like Eddie, so Viridian, he's an observer as well, Foggers and stuff like that. But when there's only one person, there's 6 games going on at the same time, there's only one person casting it, which is myself, sometimes. Other times there can be other casters that hop in and whatnot. It's like, I have to just pick the Order and Chiefs game because they're investing money into the region, and if they go, then no one's getting paid, and everyone's a pug team, basically.
Yeah, I mean, think about like what's happened to North America in the like post-COVID era. Valorant came out, we lost a whole bunch of tier 2 and tier 3 talents of that game. All the orgs went to EU or went to Valorant, and all of a sudden NA's been just irrelevant for 3-4 years, and we're only now building things back. And that's taken a huge groundswell of support with Flom in the Mythic Cup, and then now Jason Lake and the Revival series.
Yep.
And it's like we're having to rebuild North America brick by brick. And this was a tier that not in the too distant past was winning majors and putting up #1 teams in the world and contending all the tournaments. And now we're just struggling to keep 5 American players or 5 American Canadian players on one team. So as soon as the support in the bottom falls out, eventually the top end is going to crumble. You know, we wouldn't have, like you were saying, like what would happen to like a FlyQuest if the support for the tier 2 in Australia fell off? Like would we be bringing new talent so that FlyQuest could compete and try and make a name for himself in the bigger tournaments?
I was going to say, winning a major is a bit out there, okay? It was a fluke win. Can I say fluke win on Cloud9?
I don't care that it was a fluke win. It's the most important victory since the Revolutionary War in American history.
Okay, I'll take that in particular.
Yeah.
But no, that's what I put it down to with coverage. Like, basically, some people have this philosophy that I only want to cast good games, okay? They don't want to cast anything else. Only the good games they want to cast for. And I disagree with that philosophy a lot. I'm just like, you want to give coverage, because if you don't give coverage, you don't have those good games in the fucking first place. Because those good games will never come in because you didn't have coverage. Therefore, you can't build storylines to do those. It's kind of like finding the building block to do so. Okay, that's kind of my philosophy in particular. That's what I take into going into CS. Now, when I'm casting tier 2, tier 3 AUCS, which I'm not getting paid for, I take that, you know how, you know, your dad probably did as well when you played sports, that they would, you know, do the scoring or do the umpiring, that sort of stuff. That's what I'm effectively doing for the community, is that you're building that to go in the first place. So that's why I go to a lot of these LAN events as well.
Also just giving an opportunity for those players to be spotlighted.
Yep.
Like, not to get too far down on a rabbit hole, trying to wrap it up, but like no one had heard of Ultimate before Twist had found him. He was just playing in like Polish FPL and like in the tier 2, tier 3 in Europe, and no one's like, those games you would just never heard of him. No. Like if he didn't get picked up, he would have just kind of gone on and playing in obscurity. Maybe he gets picked up by a team eventually, but if he got highlighted on a stream at some point, maybe that contributed to Twist seeing him and him getting drafted. Like, it's so important for discoverability.
Yeah, there's a few EU casters. Like, there's some really good EU casters that do cover this. I think Trav CS, he casted Ultimate. He was wondering why as well. Obviously, he's not a big caster in particular, but this is what's so important, because you guys got good casters as well in NA. You got Phi, and you got Zinner, okay? I've probably fucked up their names. They are very, very good at picking out this talent, and also what I like about them in particular is that they will do open qualifiers that are not being paid for. Despite being paid on league and closed qualifiers, they'll do open qualifiers for organizations, and they'll also do ESA Prem with the community if they're not on. And also you got players, you got your casters like Boggs and Phillips as well. They will do the same thing as well. You also got a few others. Oh man, I forget their names, but there's one person who has a really fucking good production setup, and I'm impressed. Like whenever I cast, you know, a game with them in particular. And you guys got a lot of good casters who understand this so well. I just never get it on why it comes out not in this region. No, it's not Mordred. It's some guy in NA. I forget the names. They have a collab. They have a duo set up. That runs really well. Mordred's a good producer in AU, like really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, you know, there's things in particular that people do have to realize that if you want a scene to be successful, you can't say just support the grassroots. You got to be out there supporting the grassroots.
Yes, and that's part of it. I had to put a little bit of money where my mouth is on that, because for a long time, whenever I'd watch Counter-Strike, I wanted to kind of be, you know, like, and again, this takes after just my influence from like Thorin and Richard. Like, I wanted to just kind of be like the elitist who like just focus on the big tournaments, because those are the most exciting. You're seeing the best talent. That's the best Counter-Strike. That's what I want to focus on. But also, like, one of the best videos I've made in the last 3 months was when I covered the first NA Revival series, watching NRG and Stanislaus team.
I love Davey as a caster. I love Davey. I really love him to be my color caster. He's good. Yeah,
Davey's great. Like, but like, there's like that series, you know, that was a tier 2 NA tournament. Like, you know, they played for like $5,000. Like, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't playing for like world rankings, but it was a super fun series to watch to cover the finals. And like, you know, those guys like Hex on NRG, those guys are starting to break out. And, you know, OC might be one of the best NA operators in the next 2-3 years. So like, getting a chance to take a look at those guys and get an early speculation on them, and those guys could be moving into a liquid or complexity at some point. Like it opened my eyes. Like, yeah, maybe it's not something I could do all the time, because obviously just covering the main tournaments takes up so much of my like my bandwidth, and the tournaments run into each other. But dropping back during some of the low points and talk about these smaller tournaments is super important.
Yeah, I reckon you could probably reach a line out to Jason Like to see if you can give recaps for that as well. Also, I was going to say,
he replied to me on Twitter when I did it, and I was geeking out that Jason Lake noticed me. I was having a freak out moment.
Oh, that's good. What do you think about Walco in the NA scene as an IG? I reckon he's got some big potential as well. It just hasn't been given the right tools, or the right tools get picked up by complexity or liquid.
I don't think I've had a chance to watch many of his games. Who does he play for again?
Oh, gee, I forget who Walco plays for now, but I do. There's an underdog team. He used to play for EG back in the day. Like, he had EG Black, and that team performed a lot better than expected. But he's just been...
I can't say I'm familiar with him personally, to be honest with you.
Yep, okay. Anyways, hope you have a good day, my dude. Hope you have a good sleep. And it was nice chatting to you.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, I'll be, if you guys want to check me out, you can find me at Lionheartz CS. You can find me on Twitch at Lionheartz1337. Like I said, I cover the major tournaments. I do recaps for them the same day the tournament happens. I do general CS content.
Yep.
Come drop me a follow and check me out. And for anyone who's watching in my audience, I encourage everybody to go check out Josh and what he's doing and support his channel. These interviews are great, and obviously he's a great caster within the scene. And I was very happy to do this. It was a good time.
Yep, and all my handles is Twitter only Joshin, YouTube only Joshin, and Twitch only Joshin. And you know what we got to do for you on your YouTube? Make sure you link your custom YouTube URL, because I saw your links in one of your feeds, and it's the old one. It's got all the numbers and letters. You need to change that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, like is one of my Twitter wrong?
Yeah. I was gonna say, what are your Twitter ones? Let's change that, because I got your Lionheartz one, and I posted in my chat already. But that's good.
We'll have to fix that.
Anyways, man, thanks for coming on. Hope you have a great day.
Yes, sir. You have a good day, man.
Yep. See you later.
Later.